Welcome to the conversation. I'm your host, Rashad Richey. We have an interesting guest today. I have with me Joe Collins III. Joe Collins is running for Congress in California, District 43 to be exact. That district is currently represented by none other than Congresswoman Maxine Waters, known affectionately as Auntie Maxine to many. We have Joe Collins on the show, 13 years of service to the United States Navy. And he has a really interesting story. Joe, thank you for being on the show.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you being here. So let's get right into it because you've said some things on Twitter. You've said some things on television. Let me jump into the policing aspect. Do you believe that policing needs reform in the United States of America?
Yes, absolutely. I think anybody who doesn't believe policing needs to be reformed is living in the 60s. It definitely needs a lot of reform right now.
What are some of your recommendations to police reform?
Well, I will tell you this: the Justice Act that was introduced by Senator Tim Scott, as well as the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that was introduced by Congresswoman Karen Bass, is absolutely a great start. I mean, accountability for police officers is absolutely necessary, especially in these day and age where everything is publicized because of social media, because of cell phones, and everybody can see everything that happens.
You made a great point, and let me talk about the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act. You say that is a good start. However, basically 100% of your would-be Republican colleagues are completely against that act. How do you reconcile the two? How do you become a bridge between those two ideologies?
Well, I would say that the majority of my would-be Republican colleagues don't live in the inner cities. I live in the inner city. I'm from South Central Los Angeles. And certain things that we go through in the inner cities, a lot of people don't get the ability or the opportunity to go through. So when you talk about police accountability, that's something that needs to happen. When you talk about body cams that need to be worn, that absolutely needs to happen. When you talk about reform on a local and a federal level, that absolutely needs to happen. We can't have cognitive dissonance our whole entire lives. And so I would say this: if you can understand that we need police reform, then you need to spend a lot of time in the inner cities and understand what people go through on a regular basis.
You make an interesting observation, and I agree with you 100% that many of these individuals, they live in a bubble. They live there's a barrier between them and reality. But here's the thing, man, you are a Black Republican, and this is the sentiment of your current party, right? So how do you challenge them to have common sense as it relates to police reform? And let me just read one stat. 94% of Americans believe that police reform needs to happen. Out of that, 58% believe that it needs to be dramatic in order for it to be effective. 51% of Republicans say police reform needs to happen and it needs to happen quickly. So how is it that an entire party of individuals are totally antithetical to police reform?
Like I said before, it's a party who does not have that inner city experience. Even a lot of conservatives who speak on issues don't have the inner city experience. One thing that we've been very effective at in South LA is bringing Republicans to South LA so they can see what goes on in our communities. They can see the lack of quality education. They can see the lack of quality jobs. They can see the deterioration in infrastructure. And these things are important in ensuring that our colleagues can understand the reason why we need reform in the police department. And if they can't get on board with it, then I suggest that they get out of Congress right now, because the government was instituted to be a benefit and protection for the people of the United States, and not just the people who live in rural America, not just the people who live in rich America, but for all Americans, including urban America.
Damn, brother, listen, man, I gotta say this, all right? You're making a lot of sense to me, and this is freaking me out right now. So let me ask you the next question that's obvious, right? Why are you, in fact, a Republican? Because typically you connect to a party based on ideology, based on policy, and everything you've said thus far is adversarial to what your party represents right now in the US Senate and the United States House of Representatives. So why are you a Black Republican?
Well, I'm a Republican because when I joined the military back in 2004, my mentors would say, you join your party based on the values that align with you, and you vote for people based on the values that align with you. When I look at the history of the Republican Party, it was started predominantly by Black men as the anti-slavery to freedom party, the party that is for limited government. These are values that align with me. Now, what the party is today is a party that, really has no inner city experience. And that's something that everybody should have, especially if you want to be a policymaker. A lot of politicians on both the Democrat side and the Republican side refuse to come to the inner city and connect with the people on a level that they can understand what the people are going through. So me being a Republican is a choice that I made on my own. When I'm in a district, people say, well, you're a Black Republican and we're all Democrats. And I say, yes, I understand, but your political party preference is your preference. Now, the issues that we have in our community goes beyond political party preference. We have a lot of aged politicians on the Republican and Democrat side that needs to be replaced by younger politicians who want to implement action, regardless if that action is going to solve every single problem. I'm sick of hearing politicians say, well, we're trying and pointing the finger at this person and pointing the finger at that person without introducing positive legislation that's going to impact our communities positively.
Let's talk about policy, Joe. And here's something I bring up often to people because I think it's important for folks to understand that there's a reason why a lot of Black people vote for Democrats, okay? Typically you hear on the right rhetoric that says, Black people just give their vote away to Democrats and they don't want anything in return. They don't hold them accountable. But let me read some statistics, okay? And this is taken from the United States Census Bureau. Under Democratic presidents, Black families' incomes grew on an average of $895 per year, but only grew $142 under Republicans. The Black unemployment rate fell by a net of 7.9% across the 26 years of Democratic leadership, but went up 13.7% during that same time frame for Republican presidencies. Across the years of Democratic leadership, Black poverty has declined by a net of 23.6 percentage points, but Black poverty actually grew 3 percentage points under Republican presidents. So the question really is, why would a Black person vote for a Republican, given all of the statistical elements connected to progress, economic progress for Black Americans when there is in fact a Democratic president?
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying. I'm not personally asking for Black people to vote for Republicans. I'm asking people in my community to vote for Republican. I can't speak for every single Black family who has experienced wealth or experienced decline under a Democrat or Republican president because I'm not 100% familiar with all of their agendas. But what I can say is in my communities and predominantly Black communities, inner cities, that are ran by Democrats, we know that things happen on a local level. And so on a local level in my community, 43% of the people who live here are living below the poverty line. And I can't speak for every single other American, but what I can say is that it's time for a shift in leadership. And I want people to vote for the person who they feel is going to best improve their quality of life. And if you've been experiencing poverty or lack of quality life under a Democrat, then yes, absolutely, vote for someone else, vote for a new party. If you like where you are, then by all means, stay there.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
My name is Cassandra Hanks. I've been with TYT for 3 years. I am a video editor and a photographer. A main perk for working for TYT is, as being their main photographer, I get to photograph and sometimes meet some of the celebrities that come through. Susan Sarandon was amazing because she brought her dog Penny. Tom Morello is probably my favorite because I love rock music. Meeting people like Joss Whedon and Quentin Tarantino has been some of the reasons why I got into filmmaking and photography was like a dream come true.
All right, well, the Young Turks special election day coverage dropping.
An amazing power panel.
Look at this panel. You want to talk about power?
It's like a smart Destiny's Child.
We're all too strong. We start a revolution. Yes, another one.
Aren't you excited?
Wow.
And then
the best writers in the country are right there on this panel with the obvious exception of John.
Why is he lying? Because these are acts that you can commit with impunity.
Most of us are usually in boxer shorts underneath.
I went with the pants today.
This is the first ever power panel with Donald Trump as president.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
We have to stop pretending that race is not an issue in this country.
Now keep in mind, racism had gone away until Barack Obama brought it back.
That's right.
They want to protect life so much that they want to ensure that insurance companies don't cover your maternity care.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him, and I love it. I mean, it's the only way that I find my news.
Looking through YouTube, looking for political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watched the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day at high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
That feel of authenticity makes it seem like what they're saying is true.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
Senator Tim Scott, you brought him up just a minute, man, and he's been in the headlines because when he gave his rebuttal speech, he basically said that systemic racism isn't that real. And I looked at some of your tweets, and you've kind of echoed the same thing. As a matter of fact, let me read this. Let me read it verbatim. You said, Uncle Tom, Uncle Tim, Uncle Bob, Uncle Frank, I don't give a damn. I'm standing with this man. And then you tagged Senator Tim Scott. So do you agree with his first assessment that somehow racism is not that big a deal, basically is not systemic in the United States?
No, this is what I agree with. His sentiment was America isn't racist. And I agree, America is not racist. We have racist people in America, and we have policies still in effect in America that contribute to the systemic racism in America.
So you do agree that systemic racism is in fact a reality in America?
Oh yeah, absolutely, it is. I mean, you.
So brother, what do you say? And I got to opine, man. So what do you say to people like Mitch McConnell and others who say that systemic racism is a fantasy, systemic racism is not real? What do you say to those guys, and do you challenge those individuals in your party to stop saying damaging things that only cover up the reality of the evil that we all know permeates in our culture?
Well, like I said before, Mitch McConnell doesn't live in anybody's inner city. And so if you don't live in the inner city and you've never been affected by it, then obviously it's not real.
Do you really think you have to live in the inner city, brother, in order to understand that racism is real in America? Let me read some other stats, man. This was published by the Public Religion Research Institute. It says 57% of Republicans believe that whites face a lot of discrimination. That's what Republicans say. Those same Republicans also say 52% of those Republicans say that black people face discrimination. Literally, white Republicans are saying that they face more discrimination than black people in America. Now let's compare that to Democrats in this study from Public Religion Research Institute. Among Democrats, 92% of Democrats say that black people face discrimination in the United States of America. I guarantee you, brother, all of those Democrats don't live in the urban city or in urban America. They don't live in the inner city. Not all of them, the vast majority of them don't. So how is it that these white Democrats can understand that systemic racism is a reality, but these white Republicans cannot?
Well, I don't even have an answer for that question. I'm not a white Republican. I can speak from my experience. I've faced discrimination, and I know people who face discrimination from across the entire world, even racism. I mean, we still have the Ku Klux Klan that are still in play in some pockets of America. But, if a person a white person say, well, I've experienced some type of discrimination. I mean, yeah, obviously, when you have an American history that is based on slavery and the descendants of slaves haven't been made whole yet, and they're looking at those people like, you know what, you guys got your due process, but we have yet to get ours. I can understand how they'll feel that way. And when it comes to Democrats, the media puts a lot of this information out, and then a lot of people feel the same way. A lot of people experience it, so I can understand both sides.
Okay. Let me go to a direct quote from Senator Tim Scott. Are you a fan of Senator Scott's? Is that fair to say?
I think he's a pretty awesome dude.
Okay. He said, one of the reasons I have asked to lead this police reform conversation on my side of the aisle is because I personally understand the pain of being stopped 80 times driving while black. Now, this was after he said systemic racism does not exist. Now, already on this show, Joe, you have said systemic racism is real. Senator Tim Scott says it is not. Mitch McConnell says it is not. You have already said on this program that the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act is a good start. They say it is a bad start. They actually said, and I quote, it is a non-starter. You, based on two massive social issues, you have already created more connection to disenfranchised communities within minutes than they have in years. How do you get down with a political system like that without calling them out at the same time that you call out Democrats for whatever the partisan ideological differences may be?
I think for me, because I served in the military, and one thing that we do is we respect both aisles on a nonpartisan basis. I'm critical of everybody. I'm critical of Democrats just as much as I am of Republicans, and a lot of people hate it, but at the end of the day, I don't care because my job right now is to represent the people. And if the people feel like they're being discriminated against, if they feel like they're having all of these problems, then as a representative, it is our responsibility to do what we can to represent those people in a manner that they want to be represented, not a manner that we feel like we want to represent them in. So if people are getting pulled over by police, if discrimination is real, if all of these issues people are really feeling in their hearts, then we got to do something about it. We can't sit back and ignore it and say, you know what, I'm going to ignore your reality because it doesn't fit my agenda. We got to stop doing that. And that's why we need to overhaul every single politician that we have that is not willing to put forth action to improve the lives of the American people.
Well, let's talk about that. Now, you have been critical of Maxine Waters. You've even called for her arrest, saying that she basically tried to influence a trial, okay? And you called for her arrest. You cited a code for calling for her arrest. Did you call for the arrest of Donald Trump?
No, I did not.
Tell me why.
Because in Donald Trump's speech, because I was there, he said that we need to go peacefully protest, peacefully walk to the Capitol and let our voice be heard. Donald Trump didn't say, oh, well, if this election doesn't go right, then you guys need to get in the streets and remain confrontational and do all of this stuff. He's never said that.
Now, Donald Trump did say during that speech things that did incite individuals to riot. As a matter of fact, Mitch McConnell said that he is responsible for the insurrection against the United States Capitol. He said that right after this. Pence basically said it without saying it. Do you disagree that Trump is responsible at least for the insurrection? Now, I'm asking you this, brother. I'm not trying to be unfair to you. I'm asking you this because you have been very big and bold as it relates to Maxine Waters. Are you able to exhibit that same boldness when it comes to people in your own party?
Yeah, I don't think President Trump had anything to do with inciting a riot at the Capitol. And the reason why is because when you look at the FBI reports that came out, these things have already been planned before he even had his speech. As a matter of fact, the people are already walking up to the Capitol and trying to break in before the president even finished his speech. But if we could say that President Trump is responsible for inciting what happened on January 6th by not taking action, then we could say that Mitch McConnell and all the rest of the representatives are responsible for the rioting that went on this whole entire year for not passing simple criminal justice reform that would negate the majority.
I see what you're doing, brother. I see what you're doing, Joe. And people aren't saying he's responsible because of inaction. They're saying he's responsible because of his action, because of what he said prior to that. And there are individuals who were arrested by the federal government who said, and literally said point blank, I did this because Trump told me to. They said that in the investigation, and that's part of the documented evidence, that they would not have engaged in this activity unless the president of the United States said so. But let me go beyond that. Do you think what happened at the Capitol was in fact a terrorist attack, that these individuals should be condemned to the highest order, and it was un-American what they did?
I think that what they did was uncalled for. I think it was irresponsible.
You don't think it was criminal and acts of terror?
It wasn't an act of terror, but it was definitely criminal. I wouldn't support anybody going into that Capitol building. I think. So, brother,
what's your definition of terrorism?
Terrorists would be like an al-Qaeda organization who are looking to overthrow the government. That's what I look at a definition of a terrorist.
That is not the criminal definition of terrorism. The criminal definition of terrorism is the utilization of coercion, force, aggression, and criminality in order to exert political influence. That's what terrorism means. That is your textbook legal definition of terrorism. Now, when you look at what happened, I want you to do this, Joe, because you're a smart guy. When you look at what happened, if their last names would have been Muhammad, who stormed that Capitol, would you call it terrorism then?
Probably. It just depends. Are they American or not?
It doesn't matter. Terrorism is terrorism, regardless of your race, regardless of your religion. Terrorism is terrorism. And what you have just said on this show, brother, think about it. If their last names would have been different, you would have called their actions acts of terrorism. And I want you to get the connection here. And this is why people are outraged and irritated, because we all know that if their last names would have been Muhammad, if they would have happened to be black people who stormed that Capitol, sir, they would be dead. They would have been shot dead, okay? This would not have been called uncalled for, as you said. This would have been called an act of terrorism. And I would love it for folks on the right like yourself who actually do have some common sense to say, you know what? It's time to draw the line in the sand. The crazies are over here and the people with common sense over here. Yes, this was a criminal act and an act of terrorism. Can you do that, Joe?
Yeah, I don't think I would. I would call it criminal, but the terrorism, I think that's going too far. I think it absolutely is going too far. And what I said about his last name being Muhammad, I asked if he was American or not. Now, if he wasn't American, then absolutely, because you're exerting political force from another country. But here in the United States, even the Constitution says a well-regulated militia is necessary to keep the government in check.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, since you want to go there. Are members of the KKK, are they terrorists?
I would say they are.
They're American.
Yeah, but they exert their own political force.
Exactly, brother. You just made my point for me.
Yeah, but you're talking about a group of people who are not associated with any organization. You can say, well, they're Trump supporters, but Trump supporters is not an official organization as the Ku Klux
Klan. But they are associated with organizations. I want you to read the Justice Report from 2006 that said the greatest threat to American policing is the infiltration of white supremacists and organized groups like the KKK inside of police agencies. They said in a study that was the greatest threat to policing in America. That's an organization.
The Ku Klux Klan is absolutely an organization.
And they're connected to organizations, is my point.
Some people are.
Yeah. Okay, let's, we got a couple of minutes, man. Why are you running against Maxine? Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Well, I think it's time that we had a change in leadership here in South LA. Maxine, she's been there for a very long time. She was very productive in the 90s, but in the 2000s, we haven't had that same production. I think that a person who is as senior as Maxine Waters no longer represents what the people are looking for. And so this is why I'm running. We need new infrastructure. We need to improve our quality of life. We need to improve our education. We need new jobs. We need someone in Congress who's going to represent us and actually write bills and get bills passed that's going to improve the quality of life in Americans. But also one thing that's more important, work with Democrats as well as Republicans and independents in order to make these type of things happen. I think right now you have so many people who are struggling to be right where they filibuster each other to death and we can never get anything done.
Joe, we're running out of time, man. You have run for this seat before. I think you got about 80,000 votes. It's a district population of well over 700,000 people. You got 46 to 49% Hispanic, around 23 to 25% African American in this district. What makes this run for you different? Why do you think you're gonna be better at running this election this time?
Well, last time it was my first time running. We did a really good job. We did better than any other person has run against Maxine. She is a formidable opponent. But this time, I think we learned a lot. We gained a lot of experience from our last election, and we're going to run a more positive campaign to where we highlight what it is that we plan on doing for our community.
All right, last question before I go. Did Trump, in fact, lose the election, or did some mystical creature steal it from him?
Well, I'll say this. He did lose. The Democrats did what needed to be done in order to win that election. And I think this next time, the Republicans, if you want to win, you got to get down and get dirty like everybody else.
My brother, I appreciate your time today, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on The Conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, friends. You're watching The Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and for the first hour, I'll be your only host, and I'll be joined by John Iadarola, the host of The Damage Report here at TYT Network, for the second hour, where we will give you some good news on the vaccine and that whole debate that we've been talking about regarding whether or not the patent for the vaccine should be lifted. We have some positive updates on that. John and I will also talk about the latest decision by Facebook in regard to whether or not Donald Trump should continue being banned from that platform. Twitter has also weighed in on that. And we're gonna switch things up a little bit. There's an interesting story regarding a mother-daughter duo who are facing some pretty serious criminal charges after they rigged an election for homecoming queen. So it's a little different from what we typically talk about, but I'm really looking forward to having that conversation because it does have a little to do with our justice system and whether or not the authorities should throw the book at her. But in the first hour today, lots of heavy news stories. Unfortunately, Tucker Carlson returns to the program with his white supremacist denials. But before we get to all of that, I do want to encourage you guys to help to support the show. You can do it for free by liking and sharing this stream if you're watching on YouTube. Another way you can do it is by becoming a member, and you can do so on YouTube. Our YouTube members get a choice between 3 different tiers, and at the $4.99 level, you can get access to the post game, you can watch videos on demand, use custom emojis, and you also get access to members only merchandise and discounts. We're gonna have a fantastic bonus episode for our members tonight after the main show, so definitely check that out. So just click that join button and you'll see all of our offerings, as Cenk and I like to say. And as we always love to tell you, we love our members and we wouldn't be able to do this without them. So thank you for your support. We genuinely appreciate it. All right, well, moving on to our first story of the day. Tucker Carlson, who's just right on brand. Tucker Carlson's brand is pretty clear to anyone who's paying close attention. He will deny white supremacy in the United States. That's really a huge part of his brand, while also saying something that has a kernel of truth to it, something that maybe appeals to populist sensibilities in the United States. And in this particular case, he decided to not only deny white supremacy, which is a trend with his show, but also shockingly criticize US imperialism, which is something that Tucker Carlson has been in favor of throughout his entire media career. Now, let's listen to what he had to say in one of his latest segments.
Does anyone in power really think something called white supremacy is the single greatest threat America faces? No, of course not, no one thinks that. Susan Rice knows it isn't true, so does Barack Obama. So do all of the other architects of this particular lie. They made it up in the first place, so of course they know precisely how false it really is. They may be liars, but they're not delusional. In real life, they understand perfectly well what actually threatens America. They've seen it up close. It's the culture that produced them. It's the decadent rich people from their class at Harvard. It's the gender studies department at Cornell. It's the cat cafes in Austin and Asheville. It's the Monday editorial meetings at the Atlantic magazine, where David Frum is treated like an important intellectual rather than some dopey middle-aged Canadian Twitter celebrity whose life goal is to force America into yet another unwinnable, pointless war. Those are the people who actually detest the country. They're the ones who are working through the night to destroy it. They're the people who are committed to and in the process of excusing violence. So if you wanted to save America, these are the people you'd be worried about. They make the Iranian nuclear program look like nothing.
Oh, is Tucker Carlson concerned about unwinnable, pointless wars? Because I'm old enough to remember what his rhetoric was like back in 2003 when the Bush administration was considering, at that point, they were considering a preemptive war in Iraq. I didn't hear any protests coming from the likes of Tucker Carlson, heir to the Swanson wealth. And now all of a sudden, he, of course, he's very on brand when it comes to denying the very real situation that we're dealing with in this country, and we have been dealing with for centuries regarding white supremacy. On the other hand, he's now pretending like, no, I've always been against US imperialism. But of course, as we know, what really gets Tucker Carlson so angry is the video that was just released by the CIA in an attempt to recruit new people, new agents to the agency. And so he refers to the CIA as as some woke organization. He doesn't like the language that they used in their recent ad. We talked about this on the show and we explained the problems that we had with the framing in that ad as well, but of course it came from a genuine anti-US imperialist perspective. Tucker Carlson doesn't fall under that category at all. He has been very much in favor of the United States invading countries for useless forever wars. But before we get to the details of that, because I want to make my case and I want to provide evidence for that case, let's first focus on what he has to say about white supremacy in the United States, because he claims that it's non-existent. He claims that it's completely made up by the Democratic Party, by the Obama administration, by intelligence officials during the Obama administration. Just completely made up. As if we haven't had several mass shootings in this country that were specifically motivated by white supremacy. One of them was in El Paso not too long ago when an individual walks into a Walmart and opens fire, killing dozens of people because he has a problem with immigration from Latin American countries. He'll deny that that has anything to do with white supremacy. Christopher Wray, FBI director, has said over and over again that one of the top threats domestically right now is the rise of right-wing extremism. In fact, it's one thing for me to just say it. I like to actually show the audience evidence of the case that I'm trying to make. So let's take a look at this video.
Police in Texas are investigating a possible link between a 21-year-old white male suspected of killing at least 20 people inside an El Paso Walmart and an anti-immigrant manifesto shared online minutes before the shooting. The 4-page document posted to the message board 8chan calls the Walmart attack, quote, a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. That possible motive may link the Walmart massacre to a series of attacks by suspected white nationalists in the last year, targeting immigrants, Jews, and Muslims.
Racially motivated violent extremism, specifically of the sort that advocates for the superiority of the white race, is a persistent, evolving threat. It's the biggest chunk of our racially motivated violent extremism cases for sure. And racially motivated violent extremism is the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism portfolio, if you will, overall. I will also say that the same group of people we're talking about have been responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last, say, decade.
Jews will not replace us was the chant in Charlottesville in August of 2017. And just the other day, the president essentially said that they were fair. And we have seen a spike in anti-Semitic acts in this country. The Anti-Defamation League, the FBI have all shown that anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States. And I don't think we can say that it's divorced from the political rhetoric that we see right now.
To deny that white supremacy exists in America is absolutely ridiculous, and Tucker Carlson knows it. He's a white supremacist himself. But this is the type of red meat that he loves to throw out to his audience because it's his bread and butter, really. What else would Tucker Carlson talk about? He pretends to want to hold corporations accountable for their unfair behavior, but does he actually propose increasing their taxes? Does he actually propose regulations? No, he doesn't do any of that. He offers all sorts of disgusting denials of white supremacy and then couples it with popular talking points regarding corporations and, in this case, US imperialism, which is something that Americans are tired of across the board. You'll see Republican voters fight back against any notion of engaging militarily with Iran, for instance. When the Trump administration was considering military action against Iran, his own supporters spoke out against that, showing that Republicans do not have an appetite in engaging militarily the way that we had during the Bush years, the way that we had during the Obama years. And by the way, we continue to engage in militaristically across the globe, certainly with our own involvement in Yemen, the fact that we're increasing hostilities with China by arming Japan and India. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, these actions are already or have been taking place. But make no mistake, Tucker Carlson has loved the forever wars. He has supported the forever wars. He certainly has never spoken out against them until he realized, oh, maybe I can weave this into my ridiculous populist rhetoric in an effort to really stand out and appeal to the very people who might want to vote for me when I run for president in 2024. But do not be mistaken by who Tucker Carlson really is. Now, he's also right, though, in calling out David Frum. David Frum was the Bush speechwriter. In fact, back in 2002, when Bush gave his speech on foreign policy, this is before the preemptive war in Iraq, you might have remembered the phrase axis of evil. And that was a phrase coined by David Frum, someone who was also very supportive of the war in Iraq. And the axis of evil referred to the countries that were the biggest threat to United States national security: Iraq, Iran, North Korea. The warmongering rhetoric coming from the Bush administration was significant. They needed to manufacture consent for the wars that we're still engaged in. And so David Frum was part and parcel of that. He helped to craft the narrative. He helped to convince Americans that we absolutely needed to engage in that preemptive war, that we absolutely needed to ward off this dangerous threat to US national security. And so Tucker Carlson's right about Frum. But again, let's not forget who Tucker Carlson was. And maybe this compilation will remind you.
Iraq is a crappy place filled with a bunch of, semi-literate primitive monkeys. But I just have zero sympathy for them or their culture, a culture where people just don't use toilet paper or forks.
And the way they treat women, I agree with you. Their culture is, but you're in their homeland, and you're over there as an American who they hate, and they want nothing more than the Americans off of their soil. So they're not going to play games.
They can just shut the up and obey, is my view.
How could you salvage Iraq at this point?
I don't, it's beyond our control. I mean, if somehow the Iraqis decided to behave like human beings or something. He'd need to say, look, I'm a bigot, okay? I'm a bigot. I don't like Islamic extremists. Like, if you are really heavily into Islam, I'm sorry, I don't care for you that much. And I don't care what that sounds like. You can call me a racist. You can come whatever the you want.
For Tucker Carlson to try to to launder his reputation as someone who was an opponent of these wars is ridiculous. And he knows that video exists. He knows exactly how supportive he was. And of course, we're gonna bring these videos up and we're gonna call him out. It is fascinating, though, that he failed to provide a single example of how he differs or differed from David Frum at the time. It's because those examples don't exist. He was in favor of the Bush administration. He was in favor of these wars. And as you heard from the language in that compilation video, he's also very much in favor of white supremacy. So while he denies it, there are countless examples of him spouting white supremacist talking points on his show and on other people's shows as he called in. Now let's get to David Frum, because he did not like the fact that he was mentioned in Tucker Carlson's segment. And I want to be clear, there are no winners here. Tucker Carlson, clearly awful and a liar, but David Frum, not a good guy, doesn't deserve cookies, doesn't deserve credit. And so he responded by tweeting this. Carlson has some abusive personal comments about me 2/3 of the way through this complicated excuse and justification for the January 6th attack on the US Capitol. Anti-vax, pro-insurrection, quite a combo. As to the abuse, I'll say this: I've known Carlson for more than 20 years. We were colleagues at the Weekly Standard in the 1990s. I appeared fairly often on his MSNBC show in the 2000s. We were Washington friends. We had lunch. He came to parties at my house. And by the way, I totally believe him on that. But as we've learned with Liz Cheney in the House, there's really no loyalty among Republicans when people's political careers are on the line. But Frum continues and says this: all this was during the period of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Carlson now proclaims his fierce opposition to both. But when it mattered, when his already influential voice could have made a difference to the national decision, he was a ferocious advocate of both wars. He's right, so far so good. But here's where David Frum loses me, and I think loses a lot of other people, as backlash to this tweet would show you. I supported the wars too, of course, But Carlson's support was way more outspoken, radical, disdainful, and frankly, bloodthirsty. His radio broadcast description of Iraqis as primitive monkeys resurfaced in 2018. And then he goes on, but I want to focus on that tweet because when I say that there are no winners in this story, I really mean it. What Frum is essentially saying is, yeah, I mean, I supported the war too, of course, but I'm better because I did it politely. I'm better because I did it in this professional context of speech writing where I helped the President of the United States craft this narrative meant to terrify Americans and convince them in supporting these wars. That's what David Frum did. He gets no credit, he gets no cookies. The polite rhetoric he might use is no better than someone like Tucker Carlson supporting the war in the way that he did. Because the end result was the same. Whether you're polite or ferocious in your support for the war, at the end of the day, it was support for that awful war that we still find ourselves in today. And David Frum isn't necessarily completely telling the truth in that tweet because I did manage to dig up some old interviews that he did. This one from 2004 where he was talking about Iraq, where he was talking about the notion of diplomacy. And here's what diplomacy meant to him.
I think the United States is entitled and is right to be stern. I mean, look, we don't have one answer for every problem. There are a lot of problems where the correct approach is the soft approach. There are a lot of times when you have to woo and placate. But just as it's wrong to say the answer is always force, it is wrong to say the answer is never force. And sometimes force or the threat of it is necessary. Diplomacy, in my view, is not the art of smoothing relations. Diplomacy is the art of getting your way through words. And sometimes the right words are please, please, please. And sometimes the right words are do it again and we'll knock your teeth out.
His idea of diplomacy is using words like do it again or we'll knock your teeth out. Not my idea of diplomacy, not what most Americans would think of when they consider diplomacy as a way of persuading other countries to work together with us collaboratively. David Frum certainly was not some dove when it came to US foreign policy. Neither was Tucker Carlson. This story was full of, honestly, a bunch of losers, a bunch of liars, and men who really deserve no cookies. We gotta take a break, we'll be right back. Hey everyone, welcome to our first social break of the show. I want to start off by reading a few member comments, beginning with Little Mac McGee, who says, I read a report where the FBI just came out that they underestimated white supremacists at first, and only after the Oklahoma City bombing did they realize it was even a national organization. But now white supremacists see themselves as modern successors to the organized violence in the South post-Civil War, which caused Reconstruction to fail. I used to think Tucker was just winking and nodding to these groups, but now I'm wondering if he isn't actually one of the leading members and is officially part of the organization. Honestly, there are no dog whistles on Tucker Carlson's show anymore. He's very clear in his white supremacist views. On one hand, he denies them. On the other hand, he spouts the exact same talking points that you would hear from a white supremacist because he's a white supremacist. Moving on, I just want to say thank you to LMG15 who says, does Anna do a great job presenting the first hour on her own? Of course, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. We already have someone in our members section with the handle "No Cookies for You." I love it. Great news today, Biden. You're stepping on my lines, Uyghur. I know you're not Uyghur, but this is a story that we'll talk about in more detail later. But great news today, Biden supports the World Trade Organization IP waiver for COVID-19 vaccines. However, that's just the first step. I'm sure there will be pushbacks. So we will discuss that on the show in the second hour specifically, but it is great news. And honestly, for me, what's even better is the fact that Biden clearly can be pushed in the right direction. It certainly happened when it came to the cap on refugees. It happened in regard to the vaccine waiver. So that's good news. That means that if we fight hard enough, if there's enough backlash, we could get him to take the right position on some of these issues. So I didn't think that was possible before. I also want to thank our new YouTube members, Kara Lee Swanberg and Tom Woodruff. Thank you so much for becoming members. I hope you guys enjoy our bonus episode tonight. And for anyone who's interested in becoming a member, you can do it by just clicking on that join button and deciding which tier of membership you'd like to join. In our super chats, we have New World Global Community who says, please, Anna, with TYT cover what the right is doing to the people of Colombia. I will absolutely look into that and consider it for the show. Thank you for that tip. Graham Henry says, what the hell is wrong with a cat cafe? I mean, honestly, I think cat cafes are great. In fact, I wish more cafes allowed animals, including dogs. Like, you have to lie about how you have a service animal. I don't do that. I don't actually lie about my dog being a service animal, but I wish my dog can go with me to certain places. But yeah, I agree with you. Anyway, let's get back to the show. I'll see you there. Welcome back to TYT, Anna Kasparian with you, and let's get right to our next story because this is exactly why Tucker Carlson decided to talk about US imperialism. It's a hot topic, and he realizes that maybe he could use that populist rhetoric to garner some support. A new global poll finds that most countries are worried about a threat to their democracy, and that threat is the United States. This is an incredible survey. The findings come in a poll commissioned by the Alliance of Democracies Foundation among 50,000 respondents in 53 different countries. And what they found by asking these respondents some questions about their fears and how they feel about democracy in their own countries was that 44% of respondents in these 53 countries surveyed are concerned that the United States threatens democracy in their country. Fear of Chinese influence is, by contrast, 38%, and fear of Russian influence is actually the lowest at 28%. So for everything that we hear about China and Russia here in the United States, when you look at the world stage and how other countries feel about us, they find the United States government to be a much bigger threat to their own democracy. And if you've been paying attention to our foreign policy and our decades of US-led coups in various countries in the Middle East and in Latin America, you can understand why. Other findings from this survey indicate that since last year, the perception of US influence as a threat to democracy around the world has increased significantly from a net opinion of +6 to a net opinion of +14. This increase is particularly high in Germany, +20, and China, +16. Now, I gotta say, it is fascinating that the number is higher in Germany versus China because whether you're dealing with a Democrat or a Republican in the US government right now, you will certainly hear the war drums toward China. Right now, of course, it's more of a Cold War than anything, but it's something to be concerned about, especially when you want to do something about the real threat, not only to national security here in the United States, but to the world, and that's climate change. You need to be able to cooperate and collaborate with countries like China, like Russia, but the US government's rhetoric, even under the Biden administration, leaves much to be desired when it comes to diplomacy. So I'm certainly concerned about that. But even with all that rhetoric, Germany tends to be a little more concerned about the United States than China is. But nonetheless, China's numbers are pretty high. They are concerned about the United States meddling in their affairs. Now, let's be clear about something. Obviously, China is not a democracy. So China is probably worried about the United States meddling in their affairs. But to claim that China is like some wonderful democracy that the United States might tarnish is obviously not what we're trying to say here. Let's be real about that. Now, let's also move on and talk a little bit about what the respondents had to say about their biggest non-governmental threat. And what this survey found was that the single biggest cited threat to democracy is economic inequality. 64% of respondents felt that inequality was the biggest threat to democracy. Now, 48% of the power of, or 48% say that the power of big tech companies, as opposed to the simple existence of social media, is a threat to democracy in their country. Among democracies, the US is actually the most concerned about big tech at 62%. And I can understand why. When you have this monopolistic system where there are only a few tech companies that reign supreme and they crush the competition, yeah, they're a little too powerful. There's no question about that. So if you're feeling concerned about that here in the United States, just know that there are people all over the globe who are also concerned about it. And right now, anytime we hear anything about antitrust lawsuits or antitrust actions against these big tech companies, it seems to be fueled by conservatives who don't want to be censored but don't actually want to do anything about antitrust violations. Or in some cases, there are prosecutors who are looking into it. But so far, I haven't seen anything robust in terms of solutions to the very clear monopolistic power of these tech companies. Now, China isn't, like as I mentioned, China isn't a democracy. Russia has its own authoritarian issues. So I just want to repeat that again, because while there is legitimate criticism toward the United States and its meddling into other countries, we also need to be real about where these countries that are critics of the United States are coming from as well. The US might not be a threat to Chinese democracy, but the US certainly is a threat when it's selling weapons to Japan and India in an effort to intimidate China. That's some of the actions that started under the Trump administration, actually really started under the tail end of the Obama administration, continued under the Trump administration, and will probably accelerate during Biden's administration as he continues to use the rhetoric that we heard during his address to a joint session of Congress. China came up quite a bit. Now, I do want to also mention that when this survey was done, Trump was still in office. It was toward the tail end of his administration. And so the attitudes that some of these respondents have toward the US government might be a little different today. Donald Trump, of course, attempted to stage coups in Venezuela, failed miserably. He staged a successful coup in Bolivia that luckily didn't last long. But with all these actions that were taking place, it's kind of understandable why anyone would have that kind of feeling toward the United States government. But I also want to mention that this all coincides with an important report that came out on The Intercept. It was written by Ken Klippenstein and Ryan Grim. And what they did was shed light on some new findings in regard to the US-led coup in Bolivia. And what they did was of course, Ken Klippenstein always manages to get his hands on leaks and emails and documents to do this kind of incredible reporting. But what they found was that the Department of Justice under the Trump administration threatened MIT researchers with subpoena in collaboration with Bolivian coup regime. Emails to the analysts show that the Trump administration's complicity with a Bolivian criminal investigation. So as they write in the body of their piece, emails reveal that the Justice Department's involvement in the Bolivian coup regime's criminal investigation into alleged voter fraud. The inquiry targeted a pair of respected MIT researchers about their work for the Center for Economic and Policy Research, in which they broadly refuted suspicions that Bolivia's Socialist Party had rigged the election. Now remember, prior to the coup, what everyone heard was that the OAS, the Organization of American States, had found that Evo Morales had engaged in voter fraud in order to steal the election. Now, the OAS is based in Washington, D.C., and it's also mostly funded by the United States government, which is why I say that it was a US-backed coup. 60% of the funding for the OAS comes from the United States. Now, there was no evidence provided by the OAS in regard to alleged voter fraud in Bolivia. Evo Morales was forced out of the country. The opposition in the country took to the streets as soon as the OAS had released these allegations. And then you have an awful extreme right winger come into office, even though she hadn't been democratically elected. But what kind of saved the day for Bolivia was the fact that these MIT researchers were like, let's actually look into these allegations of voter fraud and see if we can confirm anything. Researchers at MIT, commissioned by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, took a closer look at the data and evidence behind the allegations and concluded what many other independent observers had already found. The fraud claims were bogus. And so after that happened, luckily there was enough pressure on this right-wing coup government in Bolivia, led by Janine Áñez, to hold new elections. And they did hold new elections. The right-wing government is now out, and Luis Arce is now the new leader of Bolivia. He comes from the same party that Evo Morales is in. And Evo Morales was happily able to return back to the country. Now, the whole point of this report by The Intercept is that DOJ officials under the Trump administration tried to subpoena these MIT researchers over the research that they had conducted because it undermined their coup. And this is the kind of game that you'll see people in positions of power play in order to maintain US hegemony in the interests of businesses that are based here in the United States. This is exactly how it goes down. If you have the audacity to find evidence that counters the narrative that allows for a coup to happen, well, then you need to be threatened, you need to be served with some sort of subpoena. Luckily, the DOJ dropped it. But again, it's important to know how these things happen behind the scenes and how censorship really does occur when power is challenged the way that these MIT researchers challenged power in regard to this coup. So this is my long way of saying that I certainly empathize with the survey respondents who are concerned about their own system of government, their own democracy being harmed in some way by US intervention. We have a long history of doing it, there's no question about that. Even in recent history, we did it. We also attempted to do so in Venezuela and luckily failed. But if you look at examples like Guatemala with the United Fruit Company, if you look at examples like Iran and how we overthrew its first democratically elected leader and decided to install a dictatorial religious government instead, again, you can understand why survey respondents responded the way that they did. Now let's counter that negative story with a positive one, because we do have a little bit of good news coming from the Biden administration that I think is important to share. In rare good news today, we've learned that the Biden administration has canceled a signature Trump-era rule that would have allowed for companies to reclassify workers as independent contractors. This is so important, guys, because if you take a look at what has happened in California after the passage of Prop 22, you can really understand and grasp how disastrous this Trump-era rule would have been for workers across the country. Now, the Biden administration rescinded the pro-business regulation without replacing it with a new interpretation of when workers can function as independent contractors and when they must be classified as employees under federal law who are entitled to minimum wage and overtime pay. So the reason why it's a problem to just allow for these businesses to reclassify workers willy-nilly is because if they can reclassify you as an independent contractor, you don't get many of the on-the-job protections that typical employees get. Things like workers' compensation, things like, in some cases, health care, right? The benefits that workers typically get as part of the job, independent contractors don't get those benefits. Now, Jessica Lumen, who is with the Department of Labor for the Biden administration, said that the misclassification of employees as independent contractors presents one of the most serious problems facing workers today. We are committed to continuing to combat misclassification, and we're particularly focused in sectors where we know workers are vulnerable and violations are rampant. She also says that Trump's simplified test for determining employee status would have frankly resulted in more workers potentially being classified as independent contractors instead of employees, which means that they would not have had the protections of the Fair Labor Standards Act. I can't underestimate, and I don't want you to underestimate how good this news is. If you're a worker in this country, and I'm sure most of you are, this is fantastic news. And I would encourage the Biden administration and the Labor Department to go even further to offer more protections for workers, including people who currently are classified as independent contractors. Now, let's also talk a little bit about what happened in California so you can understand why workers in other states have really dodged a bullet here. So in California, these app-based employers, and I'm talking about Instacart, Uber, Lyft, all of those types of companies, fought aggressively to pass something known as Prop 22. And Prop 22 would allow for them to reclassify workers as independent contractors. They spent quite a bit of money to get this done. And unfortunately, that ballot initiative did pass, and now workers in California are suffering the consequences of it. Let's take a look at this video because I think it gives you a good idea of just how disastrous it's been.
In California, gig economy companies have written a new law to suit themselves, spending the most money ever on a California ballot proposition, passing last week with 58% of the vote. Companies like Uber, Lyft, and Instacart spent more than $200 million to gather support for Proposition 22, which exempts them from a 2019 law that would have turned their drivers into employees. Some labor experts worry that this is the beginning of the end of worker protections.
Prop 22 is probably the most dangerous labor law that has been passed or voted on in my lifetime. They've sort of taken a desire that companies have had for, since capitalism began, which is to keep labor costs as low as possible.
What drivers don't get is paid time off, sick days, or unemployment insurance. That could save these companies 20% on employee costs. And as independent contractors, legal challenges will be more difficult than they are for employees. Steve Gregg says he doesn't feel protected.
I feel manipulated and exploited. I don't feel spoken for.
Gregg did 16,000 rides as a full-time driver for Uber and Lyft until the pandemic hit.
Oh, I love the work because I just fell in love with the human race doing this. And I stayed a driver for a while, despite the decreases in pay.
He says that Proposition 22 will make it impossible to earn a living driving full-time.
They're trying to push it down into a minimum wage job. You should get paid by tips.
He's right about that. And unfortunately, after Prop 22 passed, many of the drivers who were promised all sorts of perks and benefits found themselves getting quite the opposite. So as I mentioned earlier, being able to reclassify workers as independent contractors means that they don't get many of the protections that ordinary employees get. And let me also be clear about one thing. I mean, ordinary employees in the United States, it's not like they're enjoying like a great work environment right now. Obviously, we need to do more to increase the protections, but also the power of workers in workplaces across the country. Now, putting that aside for now, let's talk about the fact that they don't get workers' compensation if they're reclassified as independent contractors. In the case of these rideshare apps, Remember, we're talking about employees who are using their own vehicles and they're paying for their own gas. They're not being reimbursed for their gas. And that's another issue. They were promised by these companies before Prop 22 passed that if it passes, you could get this reimbursed. We're gonna look out for you. And that's not what happened. Ben Valdez, who's a gig worker in California, said a lot of drivers were duped because they expected they were magically going to be able to qualify for benefits that the companies made it sound like they were going to pay for up front, and that drivers were going to be getting reimbursement for the mileage. They didn't. In fact, Valdez also says, I've had maybe 3 or 4 nights where I literally made $4. So some of you might wonder, how is that even possible? Well, under this law, Uber gets to avoid paying their workers when they do not have someone in their vehicle. So if they're on the road looking for someone to give a ride to, they're not getting paid for that time. They only get paid for the rides that they give. Also, a study by labor economists at the University of California, Berkeley in October of 2019 found that Prop 22 guarantees a minimum wage of just $5.64 an hour, as only engaged time is accounted for in the wage calculations. And one other graphic, because it's important for you guys to know all the details here. Shortly after Prop 22 passed, several gig apps announced fees for customers in California would increase to cover the cost of Prop 22 benefits after several of the apps claimed prices would hike if Prop 22 didn't pass. So they're facing some legal consequences for that lie, because I'm sure that persuaded some consumers in California to vote in favor of Prop 22, thinking that they wanted to, keep the costs of using these services low. But at the end of the day, these rideshare companies decided to hike the prices up anyway. So when I say that the Biden administration made the good move here, I really do mean it. But I'm still uncomfortable with where we're at. The Labor Department's decision here is important because they effectively prevented a Trump-era rule from taking effect. But it's not enough. We need to do more to ensure that what happened to workers in California doesn't happen to workers across the country. When we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about the DNC and how it's already preparing for the 2024 election. Are they making good decisions? Spoiler alert, no. So I'll give you those details and more when we come back. You guys, our Twitch channel is gonna be so lit today. Like, it's insane. No, it's a double whammy. That's what you guys don't get. So after the bonus episode tonight, happy half hour, you can check that out on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TYT. That airs at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's Brett Ehrlich's show. And look, what you guys don't understand is how naughty things get on that show. Like, I didn't even realize how naughty things got on that show. Like, I would watch here and there, but lately I've been watching it religiously, and it's a lot of fun, okay? It's a lot of fun. They do things that we can't do on this show, so check it out. Also on our Twitch channel, we have Woznia. He aired one of his episodes just yesterday, but he's airing another episode tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Pacific. Again, you can check that out at twitch.tv/TYT. I was unable to catch all of his show from yesterday, but he had an interesting take that I don't think you hear in most other places regarding just the economic concerns of Black people in this country and what he thinks needs to be done in order to address those concerns. So definitely check out his show. It was absolutely fascinating last night. All right, moving on to super chats. And guys, like, come on, let's keep them coming in, because I want to show Cenk that you guys like it when I'm hosting solo, that I bring in the buku bucks, all right? So I'm gonna start with Jeremy Skiba, who says, I'm loving the show more and more every day. It's great that you call out both parties and speak the hard truth that mainstream media doesn't. Keep up the great work. You deserve a daily charcuterie board and all the cookies. That sounds like the perfect dinner. A nice charcuterie board, beer. I've really been feeling Guinness Extra Stout lately. I think it might be my favorite right now. You like it too? All right, yeah. Edwin likes it too, so does Bart, love it. And I can eat cookies all day. Peter Hamby also writes in and says, it's the consequences of having the First Amendment shoved repeatedly at us, saying that we can stand with or against different, though similar people without consequence ever in mind, at least in my opinion. Yeah, well, Peter, as you probably know, the free speech warriors are also the most disingenuous people on the planet, because on one hand, they'll argue that they want to protect the First Amendment, they want to protect our freedom of expression, and then they'll turn around and say some pretty awful things about Black Lives Matter protests. They'll be incredibly supportive of laws that encourage people to run protesters over if they're blocking the streets. I mean, every time I think of free speech warriors, I think of Dave Rubin, who I think is the most aggressive person to block others on Twitter. So not really a big proponent of free speech when it calls him out. Anyway, we gotta get back to the show. I love reading your super chats. Keep writing in, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian with you. I was about to say Anna and John. John's not even in the room yet, but John will be here for hour 2, and everyone loves him, so you know it's gonna be good. Anyway, but for now, you've got me, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the DNC strategy for 2024. The Democratic National Committee has already begun strategizing about the 2024 presidential election, and you're seeing Mike Pence and Donald Trump right next to me in this B-roll because they are part of the group of people who are currently being investigated for opposition research. This is par for the course. This is how politics works. Opposition research is a big part of how campaigns strategize. But what concerns me is that it's not something that tends to work these days against the Republican Party. Now, I'll make my case in a minute, but before I do, let me give you the details, gotta give you the facts. According to The Hill, the DNC is digging up dirt on several prominent and unconventional possible GOP contenders, ranging from the former president, Donald Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley, to Fox News host Tucker Carlson and Mike Lindell, the founder of MyPillow and a staunch Trump ally. By the way, I like that they decided to group Tucker Carlson and Lindell together, right? It's like, here are the more serious candidates, and then here are the unconventional candidates. Also, other GOP figures such as Senators Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and Rick Scott, former Vice President Mike Pence, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo are also considered potential 2024 contenders. I don't even think they need to bother with Mike Pompeo. I think it's impossible for Mike Pompeo to win. I mean, he's a giant war hawk. He's got no charisma whatsoever. I really find it hard to believe that he's even a little bit of a threat, but I get it. You want to do Oppo research on all the possible contenders. Now, the effort started just weeks after the inauguration, and is being headed by Nick Bauer, the group's research director. Bauer is being aided by Carolyn Graham and Austin Dieter, 2 of his deputies. All right, now you guys know the details. And now I get to the point where I explain why this is probably not a good idea. It's not that it's a bad idea to do opposition research. All parties do it. It's just part of the campaign strategizing. I get that. The problem is, what have these individuals said privately that's any worse than what they say and do publicly? Now, in 2016, the Democratic Party focused solely on attacking Donald Trump over the awful things he had said and done. And to be sure, there were many things. I mean, he was a target-rich environment, talking about grabbing women by the genitals, talked about, how Mexicans are allegedly rapists and murderers and drug dealers. I mean, we heard all of the terrible things from the Trump camp back in 2016, and Hillary's campaign focused primarily on that messaging. Trump is bad. He's a bad boy. We're not bad. When he goes low, we go high. We're better than that, and vote for us. But obviously there was a big messaging issue there because voters didn't care about the bad things that Trump campaigned on. They didn't care about the terrible things he had said. He still won. And then you look at his term, and he continued to say terrible things. He continued to do awful things. I mean, talked about good people on both sides, referring to the Charlottesville hate marchers who were chanting, "The Jews will not replace us." He totally bungled the coronavirus pandemic, the US response to it at least. And I think honestly, that's where he suffered the most politically. Had he handled the coronavirus better, I think that Joe Biden would have had a much more difficult time winning. But my point here is the negative attacks against the Republican Party haven't really seemed to work. I mean, we just focused on Donald Trump, fine. Let's put that aside for a minute. But Jim Jordan was approached by multiple wrestlers about sexual abuse, and he told them to keep quiet, allegedly. We know about that, and Jim Jordan is still a GOP lawmaker. I mean, what do these people do in private that's worse than what they do in public? And look, there might be things that they do privately that are far worse. But is it enough to persuade people to leave them and vote for the Democratic Party? I mean, Tucker Carlson, that's the other person that they're digging up Oppo research on. You don't have to dig that much. I mean, he's saying insane white nationalist crap on his show on a nightly basis now. And so what can the Democratic Party do? What is a far smarter strategy? Do Oppo research on Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and members of your own party that refuse to pass the very policies that would make the Democratic Party wildly popular. Now, on the right, we see what happens to someone like Representative Liz Cheney, who dares speak out against Donald Trump and the big lie, which is that the election was rigged and stolen from Donald Trump. Liz Cheney is facing a lot of political backlash from Republicans as a result of that. But on the Democratic side, no one is ever willing to play hardball when it comes to ensuring that popular policy actually passes. Now, do I think that the Biden administration is gonna do Oppo research on Joe Manchin? No, of course not. Or Kyrsten Sinema, or Mark Warner, or any of these other corporate Democrats who get pawned off as moderates, when in reality they're conservatives who are paid to spout the ridiculous nonsense that they do while serving as obstacles to infrastructure policy that we need, to family leave policy that we need, to redistributive policies that America not only needs, but honestly, I think our national security at this point relies on it. I think the future of the country relies on it. So if they actually were able to improve people's lives fundamentally, materially, I think that carries a lot more weight than complaining about how awful the Republican candidates are, because they are awful. The thing is, they're not hiding it. They're putting it on full display because their voters love it. But what the Republican candidates will not offer is a better life. They're not gonna offer solutions for healthcare. They're not gonna offer solutions to do away with corporate greed. I mean, they'll pretend like they care about corporate greed, but they won't do anything about it. The question is, while Democrats propose wonderful legislation. I would like it to go much further than it does, but still, it's a start. Are they willing to fight for it, accomplish it, and improve the lives of the very people they claim to be concerned about? Because if they do, I would argue that they would be far more popular than they are today. And the Opera research wouldn't need to be a big part of their campaign. It wouldn't have to be the thing that they latch onto or rely on to be popular, to win these elections. But they're just not willing to do it. So far, what we've seen from the Biden administration is a pretty decent list of executive orders. The coronavirus relief package was okay. They certainly did cave to the demands of a conservative Democrat like Joe Manchin in cutting the weekly unemployment amount from $400 a week to $300 a week. They implemented more means testing. They didn't need to do any of that. But still, that relief bill did improve the financial situation that many Americans were feeling anxiety about at that time. But moving forward, we do need to do something about the infrastructure bill, which is wildly popular. We do need to pass Biden's American Families Act, which is also tremendously popular across the board, even with Republican voters. If they fight for it, if they accomplish it, again, they don't have to rely on the Opera research, because Americans will feel that improvement in their lives. And that speaks much louder than Trump bad, Pence bad, Tucker Carlson racist. They know all that. Anyway, we gotta take a break. Actually, no, you know what? I'm gonna keep going. I have 4 more minutes. This is great. I'm not used to being able to do 5 stories like this, but I do wanna give you an update on the Liz Cheney story, because there's an update, and I don't really feel bad for her, but I think it is a cautionary tale for anyone in the Republican Party who dare speak their mind or speak the truth. So, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise, the second most powerful member of the GOP in the House, is now also backing the ouster of Representative Liz Cheney due to her unwillingness to go along with a pro-Trump narrative. Now, this has been a developing story. It comes after Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, getting caught on a hot mic saying that he is frustrated with Liz Cheney and her unwillingness to, basically stop criticizing Donald Trump, stop telling Americans the truth about what actually happened in the election, which is the fact that Biden won it. But when you look at Scalise's statement and what he suggests, you can already read the tea leaves. You know what's gonna happen to Cheney. House Republicans need to be solely focused on taking back the House in 2020 and fighting against Speaker Pelosi and President Biden's radical socialist agenda. And Elise Stefanik is strongly committed to doing that, which is why Whip Scalise has pledged to support her for conference chair. So that was a statement from a spokesperson for Steve Scalise, essentially saying that he absolutely does back Liz Cheney losing that leadership position, and the name Stefanik is now in the Republicans' consciousness. This is what they want. They want to replace her with Stefanik, who actually is a little more moderate when you look at her voting record compared to Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney has voted with Trump more often than Stefanik has. However, there's a big difference. Stefanik knows that she needs to present herself as a Trump loyalist in her words, in her actions, maybe some of her votes not so much, but it doesn't matter. She knows where the Republican voters are, and the vast majority of them still approve of Donald Trump. And if you want to have a political career in the Republican Party, you just got to go along with it. You can't tell voters the truth like Liz Cheney did. That's political suicide, and we're seeing that right now as we speak. Now, Donald Trump, of course, loves the idea of replacing Cheney in this leadership role with a loyalist like Stefanik, and so he's weighed in, and he says that Elise Stefanik is a far superior choice, and she has my complete and total endorsement for GOP conference chair. Elise is a tough and smart communicator. And what does Stefanik have to say about this? She didn't even do the fake like, oh no, I'm I'm not even thinking about this. No, I'm really focused on my No, she loves it. She loves it. She says this: "Thank you, President Trump, for your 100% support for House GOP conference chair. We are united and focused on firing Pelosi and winning in 2022." So it's worth discussing what this means for both the Republican Party and, honestly, the Democratic Party as well. Because while the Democratic Party was already a big tent with progressives and corporate Democrats all included in one, now we have this situation in which these Trump-era Republicans, people like Liz Cheney, are looking for a place to call home. And many of these never-Trumpers, even before the 2020 election, decided to make their way to the Democratic Party. And what we should be concerned about is how these people, who tend to come along with moneyed interests, can push the Democratic Party further to the right, which is the exact opposite of what we want. So while there are some positive reactions, people are amused by what's going on, they think it's funny, I get it, and certainly I don't feel bad for Liz Cheney at all. But my point here is, I don't want Liz Cheney's brand of republicanism to further infiltrate the Democratic Party, which has already become quite a bit of a problem in their lack of representation of working Americans and their willingness to take on a more favorable view toward corporate America. So that's already been a trend, and I'm worried that it's going to continue to be exacerbated by what's happening in the GOP. And clearly what's happening in the GOP is this pretty terrifying authoritarian culture where there's one true leader. You're not allowed to ever tell the truth or speak out against someone in this position of power, Donald Trump. If you do, there will be brutal retaliation. You'll lose your leadership position. I mean, for a party that consists of countless people who claim that they're disgusted by cancel culture, get a load of them. If you tell your constituents the truth about what happened in the 2020 election and you go against our dear leader, Donald Trump, well, there'll be a price to pay. So Liz Cheney effectively getting canceled by the Republican Party. They're gonna have a vote on this next week, and it's pretty clear how it's all gonna turn out. But this chaos in the GOP does spill over in negative ways for the Democratic Party as well, and that's something to keep an eye on. Let's take a break, and when we come back, our good friend John Iadarola will join us to have a discussion about the coronavirus vaccine and many other topics. One of my favorite stories of the day is Meghan McCain's reaction to what's happening to Liz Cheney. Don't miss it. I'll see you in a few minutes.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, Crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, right, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you gotta force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, Give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you wanna know how we're gonna win going forward, those lessons are super important and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com. We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Notice the music, the theme of the music today on the show, and it's because it's Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
You never know. I thought he was just in a really chill mood. I don't know.
I mean, that song was beautiful, but God, I know that Cinco de Mayo is obviously more than this. But I miss going out and having margaritas with friends.
No, I'm pretty sure that's actually all that it is.
That's all that it is. It's National
That does
Margarita
sound
Day.
good,
That's
though.
all it is. Yeah,
I haven't had a margarita in a while. That sounds pretty good. That might have to happen soon.
Margaritas are great. By the way, Anna Kasparian and John Iadarola with you.
I'm here providing margarita commentary.
Exactly. He's an expert.
I'm trying.
John, of course, is the host of The Damage Report. I was looking at your shirt because I'm like, does your shirt say Daddy Dragon on it?
No, it does not. And that's not even the name. I will say that 1,000 times. That's not the name. No, this is the, that doesn't get the lower third out of the way. This is the Dragon Squad 2.0 shirt, now available at ShopTYT.com. I love it in green. I really like it. It's very popular. Yeah.
It's fitting you well in your new like swollenness. You're looking very swole, as the kids would say.
You're making me like I'm an 11 out of 10 uncomfortable. But do go on. No.
All right.
Anyway.
Well, if you're not uncomfortable enough, we're going to talk about Meghan McCain next. So that'll be fun.
That'll do it.
But I was just talking about what's going down with Representative Liz Cheney and how the GOP is basically gonna remove her from her leadership role because she refuses to go along with these Trump lies about the 2020 election. Well, we're not the only ones who think that that's problematic. Meghan McCain also finds it problematic. So let's hear what she has to say. I'll toss the video though. So Meghan McCain is not pleased with the fact that House GOP lawmakers are planning to oust Liz Cheney from her leadership role because of the fact that she criticizes Donald Trump and also refuses to just regurgitate these lies about the 2020 election allegedly being rigged. And so her rant here is fascinating. I want you to focus though on how quickly she makes it about her. Watch.
Well, let's cut the crap. He wasn't caught on a hot mic. I think anyone in politics knows that that was done intentionally. What's happening is it's very clear, and I'm going to be a little crass. They're shivving her for her going on television multiple times and saying that the election wasn't stolen and for refusing to debase herself to Cheeto Jesus. I don't understand what's going on. I have spent the past 5 years of my life trying to accept, understand, and include the MAGA base of this party. And the message that's being sent by the highest member of Republicans in Congress is that women like me and Liz Cheney, who refuse to bend the knee to President Trump, but still remain loyal Republicans, we don't have a place in this party. We are worthless. We are not worth fighting for to keep. And the leadership in the party is doubling down that Trump is the future. Now, what happened when we doubled down that Trump is the future? We lost 4, count them, 4 Senate seats in the last election in red states.
So, I mean, it's interesting because I do agree with how wrong it is to have Liz Cheney face backlash for like telling the truth for once in her life, right? Like I have no love for Liz Cheney. Giant, war hawk, like loves to invade countries. I mean, created this right-wing think tank with Bill Kristol with the sole intent of manufacturing consent for wars abroad. So no love for Liz Cheney. However, the fact that people in the Republican Party, lawmakers in the Republican Party, don't get ousted for allegedly covering up sexual abuse. In the case of Jim Jordan and the wrestlers who came to him about sexual assault and rape, like that's not worth punishing them for. But speaking the truth, and it's counter to obviously what Donald Trump wants the narrative to be, that deserves the backlash.
Yeah, they're not mad at Matt Gaetz right now.
Right.
Despite all the QAnon furor and all that, they're mad at her. Agreed, no love lost for her. Just such a weird expression. Yeah, no, she's awful and she should have been canceled for a long time, but this is the thing that the Republican cancel culture machine has spooled up for. She must be destroyed, removed from society, fully and utterly canceled because she's saying things that are not politically correct from their point of view. That's what it is. Meghan McCain there is like 95% right in most of what she said. The funny thing with her though is that even when she's like almost totally right, there is that I'm the princess of Arizona sort of thing, because what she said there was, I've spent the last 5 years, and most of what she continues that sentence is fine, trying to understand, accept, and then she said, and include the MAGA base. Oh, I'm sure they very much appreciate that, of you trying to include them in the party that wants nothing to do with you. Like she's the bouncer on the club. Like, no, they're not trying. You want to have some influence, and you don't really because your party has moved. Like you're in cuckoo land, they're in beyond cuckoo land. That's sad. I hope that the Democratic Party never gets that insane that I feel as out of it as she does with the Republican Party. But that is the truth. They don't need your acceptance. You need to accept what has happened to them. This is really a problem of you because they're not coming back anytime soon.
But what does that mean for us? Because that's what I think naturally that's where our head should be at. Because if traditional Republicans who we clearly do not have love for, we do not agree with politically, people like Liz Cheney, if they get rejected by this Trump-centered Republican Party that refuses to ever counter him, ever hold him accountable, where does Liz Cheney go? Where does Meghan McCain go? Where do these people go?
Well, Meghan McCain will probably stay there for a long time on The View because I have a feeling The View doesn't want to have like Candace Owens or Tomi Lahren or whatever.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about The View. I'm talking about Republican voters like her politically. Where do they go and where do they vote?
I mean, I think that So what percentage of the population will they still have is an interesting question. I would say, I think maybe a more interesting one though is, what percentage of the population will they need after they get done doing to the electoral system what they're currently doing? Because they should be horrified of how unpopular their positions are, or more importantly, how few positions they have for people to agree or disagree with. And I think that they get that under sort of normal ways of analyzing the likelihood the party is going to win, the Republican Party future doesn't look particularly good right now. But they're not adapting by trying to broaden their appeal. They're just trying to drive as many people out of having the ability to vote as possible. And so I think the question really is for the Democratic Party, will you overcome that? They have one big way to do that. That is HR 1. And right now, it doesn't look like they're gonna be able to pass it.
No, because...
And so why would the Republican Party have to become sane once again? They're going to be able to win in a lot of states, maybe not nationally, but maybe, and they're gonna be able to win because the Democratic Party is going to allow the craziest people in the country to determine whether people get to vote or not.
You know, I saw that you tweeted about this story and I talked about it in the first hour of the show today. The DNC had already begun digging up opposition research on dozens of potential Republican presidential candidates for 2024. And you know, the reason why I bring it up is because the argument that I made is that it would be far more effective if they did opposition research on corporate conservative Democrats in the Senate, like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, to basically show them who's boss, to actually get the important policies we need passed. Whether it's HR 1, which is incredibly important, and Joe Manchin has already served an obstacle to that. He said that he doesn't even agree with the legislation, which blows my mind. Okay, so there's that. But rather than focusing on opposition research, which I don't think is going to be effective in this political environment. I mean, you don't even need to do research. Like these Republican candidates say and do awful things out in the open already.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to find a way using sticks to get the infrastructure bill passed, to get the American Families Plan passed, to get HR 1 passed? And really all you need to do in the Senate is reform the filibuster. I know it's easier said than done, but if Joe Manchin knows that they're digging up dirt on him, and they're ready to fight. Same with Mark Warner. I pick on Joe Manchin a lot because he's the one who feels the need to be the most vocal in how much of a pain in the ass he wants to be. But there are other corporate Democrats that they could do this with. The question is, do they want to, and would they? But I would say that if they pass these policies, it really does hurt the Republican Party, because what's the Republican Party offering to their voters, really? Other than
Mr. Potato Head? Mr.
Potato Head, culture war nonsense, you know, the same crap that doesn't actually improve anyone's lives, including their own constituents.
Yeah, they feel the need to do this because they want to get out in front of the election, and it's what you do. You search for dirt. And maybe if you were to sit down the members of this team, there's like 25 people or something like that, they're gonna be working for the next 2 years. That sounds like a fun job. If you sat them down, even they might admit that they have no reason to believe that what they find is going to matter. I mean, what are they gonna find? That an up and coming Republican star is trafficking kids? Everybody knows that they don't care. That Ron DeSantis was perfectly happy to have tons of people die in Florida for no reason. No, we already know that, that's clear. That Ted Cruz is a possum-faced weenie, we already know that. He knows that, his wife knows that. So revealing this stuff isn't interesting, but they feel the need to do it. But why? Because presumably they're afraid of Republicans getting in and stopping the Democratic agenda. But as Anna's pointing out, that's not the thing that's stopping the Democratic agenda right now.
Right.
Joe Manchin, Warner, a few others, Sinema, they're what's stopping it. So is it actually about the agenda, or is it just it's our job to win? It's our job to win and then do nothing, or maybe something, we don't really care. Politics isn't really about outcomes, it's really just about winning the game. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. It is frustrating though. I guess it's a few people, they're gonna do what they have to do. And look, maybe the country will change and maybe Trump was special. And I don't know, Marjorie Greene is special and Matt Gaetz is special, and they're the only ones that can do whatever they want and say whatever they want, and it doesn't matter. Maybe for Hawley it will, or for Noem, or for Haley it will. I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. I don't think the Republican base is going to suddenly become more reasonable between now and 2024.
No, I don't either. Which is why the focus on Oppo research is a curious focus, and I don't think that it'll pay the dividends that the Biden campaign is hoping for. Let's take our first break of the second hour. When we come back, we'll discuss the Facebook board's decision on what to do about Trump's ban on the platform. What did they decide? And later in the program, we'll also discuss how Joe Biden has made the right decision, finally, when it comes to the coronavirus vaccine. See you in a few minutes. All right, rapid fire time. Starting with the super chat comments. N writes in about Daddy Dragon, Daddy's home. Ethan Gruel writes in and says, I love this. Been using the advice Anna had given on the show about going out on walks while stoned. Doesn't have to be while you're stoned. You can be sober too, but it's better when you're stoned.
Avoid cliffs.
Honestly, best way to experience the beauty of nature. It's such a chill time. It's my favorite thing to do. I love it so. You guys, it's the best time of the year. It's spring. There's flowers everywhere. Go outside, go for a walk, enjoy nature. Please do it. Trust me, you're not gonna regret it. It's my favorite activity.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Late Bloomer 65, cookies for solo Anna, thank you. Peter Grudge, hey Anna, this past Monday, I'm scheduled for 5 p.m. that day, my Pfizer shots. I got dose 1 and that evening I get dose 2 on the 24th. All right, great, a little bit of a run-on sentence going on over there, but it's okay, I get what you're saying.
Side effect of Pfizer, but that's good to hear.
Jessica Jones says, Anna, you're doing a superb job. We would be lucky to have you, please, as president. Thank you, that would never happen, but thank you, I appreciate it.
Well, I've done quite a bit of Oppo research, so
I mean,
I'm ready for you.
It's just like the GOP, like it's like Tucker Carlson. The thing is, like Oppo research would work on a Democratic candidate, right?
Because the base cares.
The base cares
potentially.
But like even things like, I mean, I'm open about marijuana use. I feel like that would somehow harm you, which is ridiculous.
What about the other drugs that you've hidden up to this point?
I haven't hidden that. I've talked about magic mushrooms. I've talked about ecstasy. We've talked about all of it, okay? It's all out there, okay? To our Twitch community, I wanna give you guys some props. Hottie Meter gifted 50 subs, thank you so much. Mr. Unknown, 8 months prime. Ked Zysky, I hope I pronounced that correctly, 4 months prime. Love being part of TYT Army. Can I be the redneck dragon? Do you, boo? There.
Who's gonna stop you?
You are now the redneck dragon. Portland Pie Dragon, which sounds like a lot of fun. 3 months prime. I can barely stand to hear Tucker's name, let alone his whiny voice. Totally.
I'm getting sick of him.
I am too. Yeah.
I'm almost tapped out, actually.
The only reason why I covered what he said on today's show is because there was an important point to make about
you should cover
imperialism and all that stuff, and like his fake populism, which drives me
oh my
nuts.
God. I think we should work with him. I think we should try to work with him.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
The One Wing Dragon, 4 months prime, Dragon Squad. Gaming Potato, new prime. You guys are awesome, thank you. Festy Bestie, 9 months prime with the comment, great to be here for 9 months with fellow leftists and the great team at TYT. Thanks for keeping it real, Salt Dragon. Love your take, sincerely, Too Strong Dragon. Thank you guys, nice. I love your comments. Thank you for writing in. El Moco, 7 months with the comment, get to celebrate my 7-month anniversary and Cinco de Mayo on the same day. We love you, thank you for watching. Now time to get back to the show.
La vida del
Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Iadarola with you. John, this is the part of the show where I surprise you by asking you to talk about your show and plug it with what you guys
I should have studied. Oh God. Okay, so we had J.R. Jackson on today. It was pretty awesome. There's a little bit of overlap. We talked about the Facebook thing that we're going to discuss in a little bit, but we've been really hammering on the vaccine apartheid issue recently. So great news, obviously, today on that we were very happy about. I recently did an interview going back over the last 50 years of Joe Biden's foreign policy with Jeremy Scahill. That's going to be coming out very soon. Tomorrow, Jason Carter is going to be joining us on the show, and every Friday we throw some political garbage in the trash. Usually that's Brett. Actually, Brett's on the show tomorrow.
Damn, you guys throw Brett in the trash?
Sometimes, yeah.
He's supposed to be having a happy half hour tonight.
He's smaller than you'd think. But anyway, Yasmin is going to be joining me on Friday, and her first ever Garbage People of the Week. So I'm very excited for that. So stay tuned later this week.
All right. Well, speaking of garbage, let's talk about Trump and his fate on social media. Facebook has announced that it will continue to uphold its ban on Donald Trump on its platform, stripping his ability to reach out to his more than 35 million Facebook followers, and over at Instagram, which is also owned by Facebook, his 24 million followers. Now, the decision was made by Facebook's oversight board, and they're not happy about the fact that they had to make this decision. And you'll understand why after I get through the story. But the oversight board released their decision, and they say at the time of Mr. Trump's posts, there was a clear immediate risk of harm, and his words of support for those involved in the riots, this is of course on January 6th at the Capitol, legitimized their violent actions. Given the seriousness of the violations and the ongoing risk of violence, Facebook was justified in suspending Trump's accounts. But they added this, and this is, I think, relevant not only in this particular case regarding Donald Trump, but it's relevant to everyone, because it seems as though the guidelines aren't applied appropriately. Certainly there's an opaque nature to the decisions that are being made. So they write that it was not appropriate for Facebook to impose the indeterminate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension. Within 6 months of today, Facebook must review this matter and decide a new penalty that reflects its rules, the severity of the violation, and prospect of future harm. Facebook can either impose a time-limited suspension or account deletion. And then finally, Michael McConnell, who is the board co-chair, said this: "We're not here for Facebook to just lob politically controversial hot potatoes at us for us to decide."
Yes, so I sort of get that. He's probably right, but it feels like he's saying Facebook is being cowardly, trying to get us to decide. But we're not going to decide. They should decide. Take it back.
I know.
Like, okay, so you guys don't want to decide. You're the oversight board. Should it just be Zuckerberg? Like, should he sleep on it? I feel like the oversight board sounds like the right sort of group to decide that.
So I agree with you. What's the point of the oversight board if they're not supposed to make decisions like the one that they just made? I think that that's their whole purpose. But I also understand what they're saying in that Facebook seems to be a little like haphazard in the way that they handle suspensions and any type of retaliation or consequence that its users suffer due to their activity or their behavior. Sometimes it appears like they engage in retaliation due to political views. And look, you can understand why people will feel that way, because again, it doesn't seem as though they apply the same standards to everyone. Decision making continues to be opaque. So in that regard, I understand what the Facebook oversight board is saying, but I do think that the board is the perfect place to go when you need a decision made on something like this regarding Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, and really fast, especially, I mean, I guess I would say, because I don't really know in general how the oversight board will come down on some of these things, but I think we've all gotten a pretty good impression of how outside of the oversight board, Facebook decides. They set up standards that they don't actually, there are no consequences for. So they say, for instance, that you can't openly lie in paid ads, and then they just let Trump lie in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ads. They have standards, but they don't actually apply them.
But they stopped the lying ads a week before the election, and they kept the old lying ads up.
That seems unreasonable. But anyway, yeah, and then like, if you're using networks of coordinated pages to boost things without them actually being identifiably connected, like a lot of these right-wingers do, you can't do that, except that you totally can, and there's no penalties whatsoever. When information, like misinformation that specifically is resulting in videos being taken down or spread by things like Diamond Silk, and there's complaints made, there's an expedited putting back up of their videos. That's never identified. Nobody explains why they have this special protection, but they do. And it's just the entire process. There's some standards somewhere that don't seem to apply for the most part, and almost always pointing in the direction of benefiting the right wing. In this one case, they did something the right wing doesn't like. After Trump violated their stated standards for literally years and actually had an insurrection, they finally ban him. So. No, I feel like, yeah, we can have a debate, I guess, about social media generally, but they're totally within their rights to do this.
In the case of Donald Trump, I agree. I don't agree with people who are like, this is a slippery slope. But like, if you're concerned about leftists getting banned on the platform, I got news for you. That was already happening prior to what happened to Donald Trump. It's just that the very people who claim to be concerned about leftists weren't making a big deal about the leftists getting banned from the platform.
Yeah.
Right. So I just find it fascinating that, as soon as it happens to Donald Trump, who was in clear violation of the guidelines, not just in the lead up to the insurrection, but from the very beginning of his campaign, like, no, cry me a river about Donald Trump. I don't feel bad for him at all.
Can I throw in one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Just because there was also the question in this graphic of you need to look into future harm or something. Oh yeah, prospect of future harm. Okay. I don't know necessarily if he'll be able to spin his base up for another insurrection, but I do know that at that cutting edge social media site, the desk of Donald Trump, he was claiming the election was stolen today. Literally today, he said it was stolen. So the things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Absolutely.
They're providing all the rationale to keep him off that they need.
Absolutely, 100%. And before the board had made its decision here, Twitter had already released a statement saying, we don't care what Facebook is gonna do, we're gonna keep Donald Trump off of our platform. So Twitter and Facebook are essentially in agreement. They will not allow Trump, at least for now, on their platforms. With that said though, Donald Trump he wasn't pleased with this decision, and Trump said Facebook, as well as Twitter and Google, had taken away his free speech. He said their actions were, quote, a total disgrace and an embarrassment to our country, missing the fact that he was an embarrassment to the country. These corrupt social media companies must pay a political price, and that's where the story actually gets kind of interesting. Because the Republican Party has no interest in regulations unless they can use regulations or regulatory threats to retaliate against companies that do things they don't like. And in this case, they don't like what Facebook has done. They don't like that Twitter has banned Donald Trump. They think that they're victims. And so we find ourselves in this wonderful position where Mark Meadows, who I have no love for, proposes something that I agree with. Take a listen.
It's a sad day for America. It's a sad day for Facebook, because I can tell you a number of members of Congress are now looking at, do they break up Facebook? Do they make sure that they don't have a monopoly? And I can tell you that it is two different standards, one for Donald Trump and one for a number of other people that are on their sites and suggesting that more nefarious things than what the president has been accused of actually go unnoticed often. And so this is a sad day for America, but a Saturday for the Facebooks of the world who have actually enjoyed a very wild, wild west kind of regulatory environment. I can tell you that's going to change. The discussion will happen within hours of this decision on Capitol Hill, just a few blocks from where I am.
Okay, this is a tiny thing and it doesn't really matter that much, but I'm petty, so I'll bring it up. It's just interesting how he's making like an antitrust violation argument and then also uses the phrase Facebooks of the world. Like there's one Facebook and it's too powerful, which is why I mean, Oh no, is the GOP thinking about breaking up Facebook? Please don't do that. That would be awful. We would really no, that's freaking great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, break it up, close it down. I don't really care. I'm just saying, as long as it's together, they get to decide if they want this individual on there when they have standards that are listed for literally years and he knowingly, willingly violates them over and over and over.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. It's like the complete and utter monopoly of Facebook. Oh, and also YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. We're mad at all of those monopolies. Well, yeah, they're all powerful, but there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
I don't know, the whole thing is just so, and then like he comes prepared. There's two standards. There's one for Trump and then there's one for other people who say things
right. No,
about stuff.
Okay,
so what, who, what, when?
Let's discuss. Yeah, I'm always amused by that talking point by conservatives. They're like, oh, there's a double standard, as if like leftists have run amok on Twitter and Facebook. Like leftists are holding it down. They're constantly trending. No, that's not what's happening. In fact, since we're talking about Facebook, let's take a look at what tends to trend in Facebook content. The top performing link posts by US Facebook pages in the last 24 hours are from number 1, Ben Shapiro, number 2, Ben Shapiro, number 3, Ben Shapiro, number 4, Fox News, number 5, For America. I don't know what that is,
it's
but
conservative.
It sounds, of course. Then you got Dan Bongino.
That's an Italian cooking show, so that's the one exception, but yes.
It's okay, just in case people don't know, it's not. Number 7, Sean Hannity. 8, Dan Bongino again. Bongino.
He had 2 recipes that day.
You got Fox News, and then all the way over there at number 10, the Rachel Maddow show.
Hey, good for her.
Yeah. So, yeah, this double standard thing is nonsense. Do people get censored on these platforms? Yes. Is it a problem that the whole process is opaque and isn't applied evenly? Yes. But to claim that conservatives are being silenced, that they can't get their message out on these platforms is so dumb and so ridiculous and clearly a lie. The numbers bear that out, the trends bear that out, and the fact that people are typically talking about and trying to refute the nonsense coming from the likes of Ben Shapiro give you a sense of how much attention their content really gets. Yeah. So that's what the reality is, and if Mark Meadows wants to threaten me with a good time by pursuing antitrust, investigations, great, I'm not against that. But I am against this lie that the Republican Party, like they're just these poor victims. I mean, talk about the victimhood Olympics.
Yeah,
like
always.
They love engaging in that, and so don't be fooled by what's really going on. All right, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take the early break. I'm gonna get it out of the way, and when we come back, we'll talk about the great news regarding the coronavirus vaccine. Welcome to our social break. I'm gonna read some member comments now, beginning with, it's pronounced miscellanea. Jake is the one who said miscellanea like forever, and I'm like, is that right? And I just, eclectic miscellanea. Doesn't Cenk say it like that?
Maybe, does he?
Yeah, he does. So I was like, I don't know, Cenk keeps saying it that way, I guess that's correct. But no, it's pronounced miscellanea. Anyway, I will henceforth-
Take that, Cenk.
I will henceforth try to introduce the phrase, "You are stepping on my lines, Uyghur," every chance I get. Because he does it. When I'm like presenting a story and like, you guys, we don't have prompters. So you have to have like your train of thought when it gets interrupted, it's like the worst because you have in your mind how you want to present a story. And when he like does that,
I love when he interrupts you to say something that was the next graphic that you were gonna go to. Like, no, let me read it. Okay. Yeah, no, that is important.
Okay.
That's why it's here.
To be fair though, because he loves when we're fair to him, he has gotten better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and I interrupt too, so clearly.
Perpendicular Time says, Anna, This is a conversation between us. John is the margarita expert. Brett, host of Happy Half Hour. Do I mean nothing to you?
That's a good point. He probably knows some good recipes.
And make sure you guys check out Happy Half Hour tonight, right after our bonus episode at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TYT.
Yeah, really fast. The double header that I like to do is you watch Happy Half Hour, you get a cool drink recipe, maybe like a Stormy or a Moscow Mule. Then you watch Dan Bongino, get a good pasta recipe. You got a good night planned out for you. It's fun.
You know what sucks? Bongino I like that name.
No.
I don't like the guy, but like, hey, Bongino.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good name.
It's a type of cheese too. Most people don't know that.
Is it really?
Probably.
Effecto says, Anna, it's a little known fact that Meghan McCain's father is the Senator John McCain. Thank you for reminding me. I totally forgot.
Well, we should double check that just to make sure. But
oh man, Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, has a comment about HR1. HR1 is a good bill and it should pass. There is one little clause in there that I'm sure both Dems and Republicans agreed on. It makes it much more difficult for third parties to even enter the race. Never mind, get on the ballot. Thank you for letting me know about that. That's an important provision to be aware of, and it's not reported on much, which is why I was unaware, but thank you. I'm definitely gonna be looking into that more to make sure that I bring it up every time we talk about HR1. Melissa, the Defender Dragon, fine, give him a date of when the ban is lifted, January 6th, 2321, problem solved. I like that, that's pretty good. Okay, a few super chats and then we gotta get to the show. Radical Leftist Dragon says, had to throw my Bezos bucks to Hassan this month due to all the talk about how hot he is on Monday. Come on,
Great job, great job.
So I'm sending you this super chat instead. Thank you, Radical Leftist Dragon. Man, Radical Leftists are the best, okay? Bees, knees, enjoy Haas the Hun, but also obviously enjoy us because we're here for you. We're always here for you. All right, let's get back to the show. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is our final segment before we go to our members only bonus episode, and you can become a member by clicking on that join button and deciding which tier you'd like to join. We kept price in mind just to make sure that people who wanted to become members can do so. Super affordable, and you get lots of wonderful exclusive programming. I want to read a few super chats just because these wonderful people obviously pay to have their super chats read, and I hate missing them. So Amelia writes in and says, phone/internet signal cut off in Cali, Colombia to suppress protests. Police are massacring civilians. Please research and spread the word. I promise you that we will do a story on this, and I'm gonna try to get it in the rundown tomorrow. But Edwin, our stage manager, talked about how there are some regressive taxes in Colombia that people are rising up against. So this is right up our alley, and I promise you we will absolutely cover it. LJ Wombology says, because you, Anna, told me to, keep on keeping on. Thank you so much for your support. And Dr. Zippy McScoots says, hey John, would the super soldier serum protect me from COVID? Would COVID affect Wolverine? We really need to know, and maybe you'll find out in the bonus episode because I'm not interested in that conversation right now. I'm just kidding, go ahead, answer it.
No. Bonus episode.
Okay, no, but come on, he did a super chat. You gotta.
Okay, yeah, no, there's no way that COVID has taken down Captain America or anyone else with the super soldier serum, and I have a feeling that Wolverine would be just fine. I don't know. I think his cardiovascular shape is probably pretty amazing to begin with, let alone the advanced healing factor, as we all know.
Oh yeah, his cardiovascular on point.
It is. Thank you for agreeing with me.
Lots of energy there. Anyway, all right. We do have some good news regarding coronavirus, and it's in regard to a story that we've been talking about for a while now. So, the Biden administration has luckily listened to the growing pressure to waive, at least temporarily, the patents for the coronavirus vaccine, paving the way for countries like India, for instance, to manufacture their own. This is absolutely fantastic news. And in the meantime, as they're trying to manufacture the vaccine in their own countries, obviously the wealthier countries like the United States should consider shipping some of our vaccines to India and other less developed countries that need our help right now. I also want to just note that Katherine Tai, who is the US Trade Representative, released a statement to the media, the Washington Post reporting that she said this is a global health crisis. It is, that's correct. And the extraordinary circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic call for extraordinary measures. The administration believes strongly in intellectual property protections, we know. But in service of ending this pandemic, supports the waiver of those protections for COVID-19 vaccines. You guys, this is just common sense. I mean, honestly, it didn't even need to take as long as it did for the Biden administration to make this decision, but I'm happy that they finally did.
Yeah, definitely. This is a step along the way. An important one, because in theory, if the US had gone to the WTO and been like, we don't support it, then a lot of other countries probably would have felt like they should probably not go against us, and it would have had very little chance of actually passing. It might still not. And so I would have follow-up questions to the Biden administration, which is, okay, so you signal support for it. Are you potentially going to use our soft power, maybe some economic pressure to put pressure on countries, if there are any other countries that are gonna try to stand against it? Because we could be not only leaders, as we are morally saying, let's do this, let's be leaders in actually making it happen. That's how you do diplomacy. Let's see that applied here as it was in things like the various invasions we've been involved in, the Iran nuclear accords, Paris, and all of that. So that would be great. We talked about this on the Damage Report this morning, and at that point, this hadn't been announced. We only had the reporting from CNN of the different factions in the White House, and some of them were afraid of angering the pharmaceutical companies. Others were like, well, I don't know. Biden was pretty explicitly in support of getting rid of them, which is 100% true. And that amazing ad that we shared yesterday on the show hopefully helped in this area. So this is good, but there's a lot of other steps. There's the technology transfers, there's the actual timeline. We can provide so much help and hopefully funding and personnel to actually get this going, but great step. And it's a demonstration that maybe it was the pressure that did it for Biden.
I think it is.
And maybe there's a demonstration that pressure works. It's also a demonstration that elections have consequences, because we would not have gotten this under Trump. Pressure or no pressure, it wasn't going to happen. But with Biden and some pressure and progressives, something good is being done.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, I was not in the camp of Biden can be pressured by the left to go in the right direction on various issues, right? I was a little skeptical of that, but I still felt that getting Trump out of the White House was important. I've never publicly said this, but I live in California, so I wrote in Bernie's name. I didn't even vote for Biden. But I obviously wanted Trump out, and the reason for that is clear. You're right, Trump definitely would not cave into this pressure. Trump doesn't cave into any pressure. He doesn't apologize for any of his wrongdoings. He never takes responsibility for his poor behavior. In this case, and also in regard to raising the cap for refugees, it appears that Biden does listen to his constituents. He does listen to pressure. And to your point earlier about how there's still work to be done in ensuring that less developed countries have the vaccine, the story about this, like it came with basically a little bit of a caution sign or whatever you want to say. So Tai said that the United States would participate in negotiations around an international waiver of the protections, cautioning that the discussions would take time That's a little concerning. The United States had helped block negotiations around the proposal since October of 2020, of course, when Trump was president. Introduction by India and South African officials. And understand that these companies, Pfizer in particular, is killing it profit-wise with this vaccine. It's important to take a look at that to understand this system does value profits over people. There's no question about it. That's what has stood in the way of waiving this patent. So the vaccine brought in 3.5 billion with a B, billion in revenue in the first 3 months of this year, nearly a quarter of its total revenue, Pfizer reported. That would translate to roughly 900 million in pre-tax vaccine profits in the first quarter. I'm not done yet, there's more.
That's pretty good.
They're doing real well.
Yeah, I'd take that.
Also, Pfizer said that it expects the vaccine to generate $26 billion in revenue this year, up from its previous estimate of $15 billion. That could ultimately make the vaccine one of the best-selling pharmaceutical products ever. That's what they're trying to protect.
Good. And look, they did it. They made it. They were one of several companies that made it, but they made it, so they should make a whole bunch of money, and they will, no matter what happens, make a whole bunch of money. At some point, though, you start to value people close to as much as money, some of us do. And we know, look, I've seen polls showing overwhelming majorities in virtually every country that's been polled support what Biden just did, supported it before he did it. Because it's the moral thing to do, the idea that like you would let people needlessly die so that a company that's gonna have its best year ever could have a slightly better year than it's ever had, they're gonna do just fine. But really, I just wanna double down on what we were talking about earlier about we've had, Biden is not going to always take the positions that we want. And even when he can be pressured, he won't end up where we would be without needing pressure. All of that is true. I've looked into it and he's not Bernie Sanders, it turns out. He's very much not Bernie Sanders. That said, in the past couple of weeks, Biden has done the squirrely, spineless Dem thing that Dems do, that he wasn't gonna raise the refugee cap like he said that he would. He was going to continue military contracts to build the border wall, which he had said that he would not. And it was looking like he was going to back down from his incredibly clear pledge to advocate for getting rid of these vaccine patents, which he made just a year ago. And what was done? We made a big fuss about it, we complained about it, and he reversed on all three of those things. So I understand that in politics, especially over the past few years, it's been very easy to get apathetic and to believe that all of our work is worth nothing. I mean, look at the last two primaries. It's really sucked. And there's this weird thing growing in the internet where some people seem to think that openly mocking organizing and activism is cool for some reason. Okay, well that's fine, you can do that. The rest of us, we're gonna be pressuring Biden to make him into at least something like the president we both need and deserve. And it looks like, at least in some areas, it is working.
You know, Nando said something to me in private, which I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing publicly, that stood out to me, and I now have in the back of my mind whenever I'm doing my own political analysis. And he's like, don't get black-pilled. Because we were talking about Senator Joe Manchin and how he says that he's now supportive of passing the PRO Act. He was one of the Democratic senators who hadn't decided to support it yet. And it's because of the organizing that the DSA has done that they got him to move on that issue. And so rather than celebrate that, we were having an exchange and I was just like, yeah, but he doesn't want to reform the filibuster, and so he knows that there's no chance in hell it's gonna pass, and so he just wants to get the DSA off his back. And Nando's like, Anna, don't get black-pilled, right? That might be true, but moving him on that to the point where he vocally says that he supports the PRO Act, that's a good move. And so you're right, the organizing, the reason why organizing matters is because it's consistent applied pressure on politicians. Tweets are not applied pressure. No one cares about your tweets. I'm just keeping it real. No one. They're not persuaded by Twitter organizing and oh, let's do a Twitter storm, on this one politician or this one person. They don't care.
Most of them aren't reading them. They have interns that are reading them.
Of course, exactly. So I say go out and go for a walk. And I mean that for your own mental health, but I also mean that when it comes to organizing. Get off your computer, go out there and fight with like-minded people, organize with like-minded people. It's also incredibly rewarding to do that, right? Because you find a home doing that. And I think right now there are a lot of progressive voters, many leftists who feel like they don't have a home. I certainly feel like that time to time, but I had this wonderful conversation with 2 DSA organizers on The Conversation. Please check that out, because talking to those ladies, it made me realize, like, no, I've got a home. And they've got the right strategy in mind. So definitely check out that conversation and get active. Join them in this fight, because the PRO Act is incredibly important. All right, well, moving on to other news. This is one of my favorite stories today. It's totally out of left field, but I think you'll enjoy it. So, some people take homecoming queen very seriously. So seriously that they engage in voter fraud. So seriously that the voter fraud that they engage in will lead to serious criminal charges, possibly prison time. That's what's happening to a young woman in Florida who will be tried as an adult following her decision to rig her high school's homecoming election with the help of her mother. This story blows my mind, it's amazing. So Emily Rose Grover, who's was 17 years old when she was arrested, alongside her mother for allegedly hacking into people's online accounts and submitting 250 false votes to become homecoming queen. Last month, Grover turned 18, and the state attorney's office said that they will hear her as an adult. So here she is with her mother. Their mugshots are fascinating. Mother looks concerned, daughter not so much. I'm homecoming queen, everything's okay. I mean, I cheated, but it is what it is.
You don't often get to like subtitle like a shot like that. Nailed it.
It's amazing.
You know you got caught, right? Yeah, that's what she's doing right there in her mugshot. She is mugging in her mugshot.
Some people just want to be validated as queens, and that's what she was hoping for, but she might end up spending time in prison for this. Look, I gotta be honest,
Don't put her in prison?
I don't think she should be put in prison. What she did was wrong, because it's not that she rigged a homecoming election. It's the fact that she and her mother did some hacking. And that is a serious crime, and there should be consequences for it. But I don't see her as a dangerous person, and she should face some consequence. I just think putting people in prison over this is crazy. But anyway, let me give you the details on what happened. Carol, who works at Bellevue Elementary School in Pensacola, and her daughter allegedly used Carol's credentials to gain access to student records on the district's Focus system. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement said that the mother and daughter accessed 372 high school records beginning in August of 2019. And so here's how they got caught. Criminals tend to not be so bright. The investigation determined that 117 votes were cast from the same IP address over a short window of time. Additionally, 246 votes were placed from the accounts accessed from computers inside the mother and daughter's home or from Carol's mobile phone. Technology.
It's tough.
It's tough.
I really hope that it's that they hacked into one system that let them change the votes. If they hacked into that many different accounts, one after the other, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. Homecoming queen, come on. I want to know who won. Like, that person has got to feel pretty amazed at this point that they got the position, they didn't end up in jail, they did it the right way.
Right.
But honestly, the one that the girl that's in jail, maybe the reason that she's smiling is she probably wanted to be homecoming queen because she wanted a little bit of recognition. She wanted people to know who she is. Well,
we know who you are now.
Yeah, now they do.
I mean, but it ain't anything to celebrate. I mean, I would not want. I don't understand the desire to be homecoming queen.
Were you not homecoming queen?
I was. So I got voted for prom. We had like prom queen, but we also had like prom princess, and I was the prom princess.
Oh God! Well, of course,
I didn't even
understand.
Cheat. I just won.
She doesn't understand these people who like scrape in the dirt for recognition. It just comes to me.
No. But by the way, it happened, and it was okay. Like, there's nothing great that comes along with it. Yeah, it's just recognition. People just want to be loved, guys. Like, and so that's why I don't really want to throw the book at her. Hacking is wrong. And there should be a consequence. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like, let her go. But prison, really?
Yeah.
Prison?
I give her an award for the hacking, that's amazing. I couldn't have done that.
I mean, is it really hacking though? Her mother's a teacher and has access to these records and was able to log in using her credentials.
Yeah.
Just that she logged in for the wrong purposes. Anyway, Grover and her mother are both standing against serious felonies for interfering in the vote. This is at Tate High School's homecoming queen election in the town of Pensacola. So unauthorized use of computers, you guys get the point. Don't let them go, there should be consequences. Don't throw them in prison though. Anyway, our bonus show is next. Make sure you become a member and we'll see you guys there.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing. I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing,
because there's always got to be a super last thing.
Oh, that was disastrous.
This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Hi, this is Tim Frisch, Director of Post-Production and Graphics at the Young Turks. As you know, the whole world is social distancing right now, and that includes marijuana.
Where you going, marijuana?
He's okay. Looks like a pretty happy guy, all things considered.
My dad wrote the story of his life. It's called Original Young Turk. It's a book on shoptyt.com. Part of the story is how I became progressive. Now, he doesn't write about that per se, but in his life story, you see, oh my God, when a community helps one another, when the government also chips in and gives you free education, anything is possible. He went from an incredibly poor olive farmer to living the American dream.
When news is breaking and when you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time. When news breaks, when news is breaking and you like, when news is breaking and you need Brett Ehrlich, it's time for Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
En lo alto de una gruta serranía, acampado se encontraba un regimiento y una caliente era bonita. Y hasta el mismo.
Hey everyone, welcome to our bonus episode. Members only. All the cool cats are here. Yeah. Man, I really enjoyed that music. I remember when I was with my ex, I don't even know how they like knew the people who organized this, but like every year at the Ford Theater in Los Angeles, they would have like a mariachi concert. And we went 2 years in a row, and it was just like, it was so much fun. And you know, Christian's Cuban, they don't do mariachi music, they do salsa. Although I will say, I let Christian have it last night. Not in a good way.
Finish the sentence.
I was like, it's been a while since we've danced salsa together. We used to like dance at home. And I don't know, man, I've been definitely having cabin fever lately. Like I wanna go dancing, I wanna go out there and live, I wanna socialize. I'm ready, I'm so ready for it.
You wanna eat, pray, and love?
I wanna eat, pray, and love, yes. But mostly dance, I love dancing. So I was like, babe, let's do some salsa right now, right? It was right before he was gonna go to bed, so maybe not the best timing. And he's like, no, we just had dinner, I'm gonna go to bed. He loves to go to bed at like 9 p.m. because he wakes up at 5. Jeez. Super annoying, which I get. He wants to get his like 8 hours of sleep or whatever. But I was like, but you're Cuban. Like, what's the point of marrying a Cuban guy if you can't do Cuban things with your Cuban husband? Like, let's dance. Like anyway, but I love culture. I don't
like it. I don't like any of them. I've looked into all of them. Not a fan, actually.
It just makes life so much more interesting, rich, great. Like I don't know. I don't have enough positive words to say, right? I just don't understand people who are turned off by it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like if it was like 10 o'clock and my wife was like, "Let's dance salsa," I'd be like, oh.
No, I know. Most guys probably feel that way. I totally get it, and I did not pick the right time to do it.
Did he?
No, of course not. He was, and then
really,
and then I got a little pouty, and I think he was trying to make it up to me this morning. And my poutiness wasn't real. Like obviously, I'm not upset with him, but I.
Did you dance this morning?
No, he just did sweet things to like make up. I know that that's what it was about.
Okay, let's just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that, and certainly there are aspects of cultures that I like and miss. I don't want to randomly dance in my house.
No, I get it, but I'm just saying I like appreciate different cultures and.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
What about what about you, Italiano? What do you do to celebrate your culture?
What do you think?
Gabagoo.
We made a baked ziti recently. We did. You actually had some.
I did.
That was of my culture. I don't get all the credit. Obviously, I got the recipe from Dan Bongino, but.
I love this like story that we've now made up about Dan Bongino.
It's the juxtaposition that we're pitching him as this nice guy that does like pasta recipes, and really he's like this roided out madman who I had the weirdest interaction with on Twitter.
Yeah.
Anyway, because I rightfully identified that his book is a complete sham and that it's all groups that are buying it up. It's not actually individuals who are reading it. But anyway,
oh, he don't like that.
No, he did not. He popped several veins. But anyway, yeah, that. I mean, I don't know. What's my culture? What's left of it? I don't know if I've ever been to an Olive Garden, honestly.
No, okay.
I guess I must have at some point, but not in the last 10 years.
Pause. So I'd never patronized an Olive Garden until, I don't know, maybe a few years ago. Because Christian was like, oh, it's your lunch break. He came to visit me at work and there was an Olive Garden. I was like, you wanna go to Olive Garden for lunch?
Where is there an Olive Garden near here?
It was when we were in a different area as this studio was being built. I don't wanna give specifics, but anyway, so we went and no, it's true. The salad and breadsticks are bomb. They're really good.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, I have heard that. No, I'm not saying, I don't not go there because I'm too good for it. Obviously I'm not, but yeah, no, I don't know. Like my grandparents, well, my grandfather was Italian-ish. It would sometimes come up. He could speak, the language and all that. But even at like my father's and my uncles and aunts, like there's nothing really left. Like if I did something, it would definitely be me just coming up with it. Like it would be performative. It would not be like continuing a tradition. I don't know. I have traditions on my mom's side, I guess. Well, we have fake traditions too. Like we do the pickle on the Christmas tree.
Oh,
do you know about that?
I don't know about that. Tell me more.
So it's the funniest thing. It's like either Austrian or Hungarian or German, depending on who you talk to. And the idea is that at Christmas, you have the Christmas tree, you have your ornaments and all that. And at some point after the kids are done opening up their presents, one of the parents is supposed to say, hey, I think I see something on the tree. Can one of you kids find the pickle? And the kids are supposed to look around the tree and try to be the one to find the pickle ornament. And the one who gets it gets a special present. The idea is eventually though, once you've figured out what that one looks like, progressively there are more and more decoy pickles on the tree as you get older. But and it's a tradition from Austria or Hungary or Germany. Except it's not at all. I looked it up, it's made up, it's American, but lots of people of those heritages think it's an actual tradition. So it is a tradition now, but it's not the one you think. But anyway, I grew up on it. We still do it to this day. We did it remotely with an iPad being held up to the tree the last year. That's tough to find a green ornament on a tree.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And I have a brother who always wins. I've won like once or twice, but.
Gotta get better with the pickle.
There's a theme to the episode.
There is. All right, so there's a fun story that I came across that I wanted to share with our members. This is exclusive members content, okay?
Don't tell anyone.
Shh, just between us. But I loved it mostly because I have a fascination with Japan. It's the top country to visit on my bucket list. In 2019, I was planning on going, and then a bunch of work-related things happened, and I just couldn't take you gotta take 2 weeks off. You can't go to Japan for a week, come on. So anyway, I still haven't been there, but I came across a story and it reminded me of how fascinating Japan is. And they got a little bit of heat for this, but I say let them go. So let me give you the story. A coastal town in Japan has decided to use some of their COVID relief funds on a giant squid sculpture. Now, they're trying to do something about tourism. That's one of the ways that they make money in this town. And so you should, I love that you guys got the B-roll of the squid. Like it's fantastic, it's really good. But this is what, look at it.
That is pretty cool.
They're so
That's an
amazing.
alien.
Look at that.
That is just an alien.
It's okay, guys. Go ahead and take that rip and then just enjoy this footage that I'm sure Brett found for this story. But anyway.
This is Anna's octopus teacher right here.
You guys, nature is amazing. It's so amazing. Nature is metal.
It is.
Follow that page on Instagram. It's so good.
Is that a thing on Instagram?
Yes, and it's incredible. By the way,
I follow Round Boys on Instagram, which is just animals that are round. It's very cute.
Oh my gosh.
It's very cute.
I'm gonna follow that page. But anyway, so this town was like, okay, what do we need to do to increase tourism as soon as this pandemic thing is all taken care of? So they took a portion of their COVID relief funds and they spent it on this lovely and in my opinion, very Japanese squid sculpture. And the reason why I say very Japanese is because like, this is the kind of stuff that they do that like does actually increase tourism, right? Like, am I interested? If someone asked me, are you interested in going to a place to see a massive squid sculpture? I would probably say no. Why would I be interested in that? But it's just something that's so distinctly, I don't know how to explain it. I'm not articulating it because I don't know how, but it's just, Japan is just such a fascinating place. So, okay, let me give you the details. The town of Noto in Ishikawa was awarded 800 million yen or $7.31 million in grants from the central government as part of this aid program aimed at boosting local economies amid the pandemic. And so the squid is a local delicacy in Noto. And building the statue was part of a long-term strategy to raise awareness about the town's fishing industry and increase tourism.
Yeah. Okay, so I had
squid.
seen I like squid tacos. I had seen the headline version of this story, and I think that the headline version of the story really is kind of messed up because the impression I had gotten was they were given money to like deal with the pandemic, and they were like, "No, we're making a squid." No, this is very much in line with what they were supposed to do then.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. And
I'm not mad at them anymore.
They received a giant chunk of money to help them with their local economy, and they spent a portion of that giant sum of money on this statue. So that's why I say let them go. The squid cost over $280,000, which is a lot of money for a squid. It's 30 feet long and 13 feet tall. And by the way, there are a bunch of other tourist attractions throughout Tokyo that I'm gonna mention in just a second. But the one thing that I'm trying to figure out is what that hole is for. Like,
there's only one way to find out.
I guess. So you gotta go. You gotta go travel to Japan, to Noto specifically.
Yeah.
And just crawl inside that hole and see what you find.
Just go to Japan and just crawl inside. Can we put up the pictures again? And can I become I was the good guy. Now can I go back to being the bad guy? I don't like it.
I think it's fine.
Look, that shot is okay, but when you go to the second shot, I don't know if we can skip ahead.
The one with the hole?
That's uncomfortable, and it looks. Maybe in person
Ben
it's
Shapiro,
better.
Let's all relax. Okay.
Why is this squid so wet? I don't know. I don't love it. Now there are massive sculptures. I don't know if this is one that you're gonna go to, but like the gigantic titans, I would go see that in Japan. That sounds cool.
Yeah, this is why. Okay, so now I can finally explain why I'm saying this is very Japan, because Japan does have tourist attractions that are kind of similar, right? So now we get to go through this list.
Okay.
So let's start off with Tokyo, which has a 60-foot tall Gundam statue in Odaiba. So that looks like something you'd be into, John. I don't know what that is, but it seems like you'd love it.
I'm assuming. I don't think that that's a transformer. I think that's like a Gundam. That's not
Gundam.
a thing that
That's what
it is a Gundam.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's not something that yeah, it's cool. I don't buy them or assemble them, but it's cool. I would want to see something like that. Sure.
What exactly is a Gundam, and how does it differ from a transformer?
I mean, Transformers are one particular franchise of basically a Gundam is like a gigantic mech, basically, like a suit, like a military sort of thing. Transformers are a sentient mechanical species.
All I have to say is,
but they were made that way thanks to the power of transformium, as we all know. But no, it's not that cool.
Nerd.
Well earned.
But you know what? Thank God for capitalism. We got choices.
You can see your squid. You can see your Gundam.
Yeah.
Maybe you can buy the two. I'd like to see the squid fight the Gundam. That's coming later this fall on Sci-Fi Channel.
Probably. More examples. Let's take a look at this giant Godzilla head coming out of a hotel in Tokyo.
That's cool.
That is pretty cool. I think that might be my favorite one. In fact, I'm not the only one who appreciates a giant Godzilla. So does Brett Ehrlich and Brooke. Look at them.
Oh, they were actually at that one? That's cool.
I love those pictures.
Do we not have the Titan?
Let me scroll down. Brett produced this segment.
Oh, I hope we got the Titan.
So Nagoro Village, there are handmade dolls that are placed around town to replace the aging population. There are likely more dolls than people in the town. Jeez, that is fascinating.
That is dark.
Some images.
No.
Wow.
No, don't do it. I'm sure there's stuff we're missing about this. And so I don't want to be insensitive, but yowza.
Wow, that is fascinating. And then, that could be very sad, so I'm gonna move off of it.
Yes.
We're having a good time. In Nishi Rokugu Park, there is a rubber tire Godzilla. They apparently really appreciate Godzilla in Japan, so there you go.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's big. Did you watch Godzilla versus King Kong, the most recent one?
I have not watched it yet, but you know what? I might watch it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. I need a movie to get into. I haven't watched.
That might not be the one then.
Thief yet. I don't know what's like holding me.
Watch what?
Okay. This story is now over. Other topics.
Okay, so we didn't get to the penis. That's probably for the best.
Wait, no.
No, I reminded her.
No, we gotta get to the penis. Okay. So let's do that. So I think that
that's just the lack of dancing talking. But
Kobe memorialized the 1995 Kobe Quake with a symbol of strength, a 59-foot robot called Tetsu Jin in 28.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty
cool. Like that. Oh my God, when you see the scale of the people, that thing is huge.
It is huge. That's what makes it so fascinating. Like,
I thought that was like a couple people tall. That thing is massive. That's the coolest one by far out of all these.
Oh, you love it. You're so excited.
Shut up.
You're so excited.
Well, this next one's pretty cool too.
Speaking of excited, all right, come on. Let's get right to the thing that we've all been waiting for. And that is the Penis Festival in Kawasaki, Japan throws the Kanaramara Matsuri Festival, blending religion, blacksmiths, vagina.
Dentata.
What is that? What is
vagina dentata?
Yeah.
It's a vagina that has teeth.
Wow.
Fangs.
Okay.
There's a movie about that actually that was filmed in Austin, Texas. It was pretty good.
Fascinating.
It was the first date I went on actually, watched that movie.
Sex workers and straight up facts
Wasn't
of
my choice.
life. Okay.
That is a photo. I don't see any teeth there, thankfully.
According to an origin tale dating back to Japan's Edo period, a serious case of vagina dentata affected a local woman. Thankfully, the local blacksmith forged a cure in the form of an icon dildo.
Iron.
I'm sorry, an iron dildo. I should probably read from the actual screen instead of my computer screen where I can't see because I don't wear my glasses. So yes, an iron dildo. The shrine remains dedicated to this blacksmith to this day.
There's a lot of unanswered questions about that cure.
And as a note,
yes,
there it is.
Yes,
that's what you've been waiting.
There's others too. You've never watched an episode of Attack on Titan, right?
Are you kidding me? I watch it all day, every day, bro.
Okay, thank
Come
you
on,
for
John.
condescending me. Anyway, it's a good anime. It's one of the only animes I've watched, but it's well, at least the first couple seasons are good. That is so awesome. Imagine being a fan of, like, imagine if you were a fan of a show about things that big, and you could go and put yourself in its hand. How cool would that be?
I mean, it would make my life. I really wish that I can do it one day. No, that one is cool.
That is awesome.
I love all of this. I think it's such a fascinating place with interesting,
thank you,
and unique tourist attractions.
There are.
I want to be able to enjoy them one day. So hopefully I'll be able to travel to Japan and spend a full 2 weeks there.
Yeah. So what was the story over for?
I've been like dying to talk about this on the post game, and I forget every time. So I finally watched 2001: Space Odyssey. I know you and I briefly discussed it.
Oh no.
No. Put that away, Bart. I don't want to hear it. I'm not kidding. I'm actually legitimately pissed that I like wasted time watching that movie. It was so awful. It was one of the worst movies of all time. Okay, I'm sorry. What? Wait, what, Bart? You like it? You like it? What is that? What was that? What was that? What was it? I was so angry that I wasted my time. Like, what did you get out of that movie?
You really want to know?
No, I don't. Yes, I do. Go ahead.
Seriously?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh no.
I like that movie because for me, it's one of those movies where it's very meta.
No, I hate it so much. I hate it so much. You're not making the case, but keep going.
But just let me make an attempt to.
Yeah.
Basically, and I mentioned this to you briefly one time, that for me, 2001: A Space Odyssey is basically it's a movie about mankind's relationship between God and the universe in general and his placement in it.
Sure.
That's what I get out of it. And basically, it's one of those movies where I hopefully, if you desire to, revisit it later on in the future. It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But it's for me, I think it's for me, it just touches me and on very profound levels on humanity in general.
But that's all.
That's just me.
That's all that matters, right? Art is meant to be appreciated. Some people love some movies, hate other movies. It wasn't for me. I didn't appreciate it. I felt like I had wasted my night.
Yeah.
Because there's like a limited amount of free time, and this is the thing. I really gave it a shot. I remember being maybe like 30 minutes into the movie. I'm like, I'm not liking this so far, but
And that was the first shot of the movie.
Oh my God. Like Kubrick delivered on his other movies, so I'm like, no, it can't really be this bad. Like, let's really like, it's gonna pick up. It's gonna pick up. And then when it ended,
were you angry?
I threw the remote control across the room. I was so mad.
Like one of the crazy monkeys.
No. Actually,
that was Anna.
Believe it or not, I'm actually not being 100% truthful. The opening monkey scene was the most interesting part of the movie.
It was very creepy. He does a very good job of using music to make things very creepy and tense.
Yeah.
And he needs to learn how to edit his videos. Like I'm gonna explain to him that he needs to do that. There was very cool stuff in it. The spaceships are very cool. Considering that it was made 500 years ago, it's very beautiful and all that. There was some cool stuff, but it could be half as long and you'd lose nothing.
Totally.
But I'm glad that you watched it.
Yeah.
It's important whether you end up liking the classics or not. I think it's important, and it puts the other movies you see in context to see the classics. I've tried over the last year to try to catch up on a few that I hadn't seen. Like we saw at Cinespia like 2 years ago. We saw Casablanca, which I hadn't seen before. Just this last Friday, we watched Coyote Ugly. So I do like to catch up on the classics from time to time, even if they don't always stand the test of time 100%.
Definitely. And also, watching the classics helps you understand Family Guy references. And
that's true,
if ever there's a reason to watch the classics, that's it.
I'm sure they've made references to 2001.
Of course they have.
Yeah.
Of course they have. Also many references to The Shining.
Yeah.
Which, obviously they're two very different movies, even though they're both Kubrick movies. But I enjoyed The Shining. I enjoyed The Shining so much that I went on Ben Burgess's stream and talked about it for 3 hours straight, which is like
3 hours?
Yeah, I couldn't even believe that 3 hours had gone by.
Is it a 3-hour
movie? The movie's fascinating because there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of unanswered questions, which I do appreciate with that movie because I think it's kind of like any other form of art where you get to interpret what it means.
Sure.
So I like that. Whereas, Space Odyssey is
real fast. The two great things that I like about 2001 is that it's a movie about transformation because clearly that's what The Monolith is about. And when that movie came out in the world in 1968, human beings were going through a tremendous amount of transformation. And along with that, it also speaks today, especially during 2020, during our moments of isolation during COVID, because that's one of the feelings you get when you watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, that moment of isolation and desolation, and that is a pretty powerful truth. On that alone, that's why I like it. It's great art.
I like your explanation of it. And I appreciate your perspective on
good.
it. Yeah,
I liked that better than I liked the movie.
Same, 100%.
Didn't like the space baby at the end. That was creepy.
Yeah. That was the point at which I threw my remote control across the room.
That's part of what the movie it speaks
I know
to about
everything about the symbolism of it. I know.
The point where Dave Bowman takes the journey to Jupiter and beyond. That's what it speaks to. It speaks about that moment of transformation and what the potential could be, hopefully good.
Yeah.
Well, but Anna, if you do see 2001 again, if you do, the only two things I recommend is see it in a movie theater and trip on shrooms if you can, especially.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
She'll trip on shrooms, so she's not gonna see the movie again.
Yeah, I did partake in my drug of choice, marijuana, and that it didn't help. I really thought it would, but it didn't help. But speaking of taking a trip to Jupiter, it is now time to wrap up our post-game show so I can take my nightly trip to Jupiter and enjoy myself, relax, recharge, get ready to come back and do a kick-ass show for you guys. But John, you're one of my besties, you know that?
Oh, this was fun. Let's do it again every week.
Let's do it every week.
Let's do it every
maybe
week.
every Wednesday.
Let's shake on it, except we can't.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, thank you to our members. You guys are rock stars. And just wanted to remind you all that since you're members, you get to check out Brett Ehrlich's show, which is coming up right after this, Happy Half Hour. Please check it out. And then after that, later tonight, Woznia will be on our Twitch channel as well. Twitch.tv/TYT for all of our friends who haven't checked that channel out yet. And have a great night. We love you guys. I hope you enjoyed the show today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave? I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.